A legendary veteran knight is staring death in the face, completely outmatched by a nightmare beast. He charges his magic for one final desperate attack, fully prepared to sacrifice his own life. But before he can strike, a blinding blue drill of energy obliterates the monster from above. The knight looks up in absolute shock. His savior is not an elite noble or a seasoned warrior. It is just a teenage shepherd holding a rock. For 8 years, Turan was forced to hide his god-tier magic and live as a peasant. But now that his secret is out, let me show you how this humble shepherd turned the entire world upside down. We kick things off with a young kid taking his playtime very seriously, swinging a stick around and shouting at the top of his lungs that he's a wizard. He's standing in the middle of a village path, looking like he 100% believes his own hype. His friend, a young girl, is playing the part of the monster, growling that she eats wizards for breakfast. It's all fun and games, right up until the boy decides to get way too into character and actually lunges at her with his magic stick. The boy puts some real muscle into his swing, letting out a sharp yell as he brings the stick down. You can see his hand gripping that piece of wood like it's a legendary sword, not just some random branch. And bonk, he actually whacks the poor girl right on the head. She is definitely not playing anymore, shutting her eyes tight in pain and yelling out while a classic impact star pops right off her forehead. The girl is absolutely fuming, asking him why he would hit her for real during a game. But the kid just shrugs it off, telling her that according to the rules, monsters are supposed to lose to wizards. Simple as that. Just then, an old man with a long white beard, Grandpa Rabus, walks up to the kids, chuckling to himself. In the background, the kids are still bickering while a younger man watches the whole scene from a distance. The girl isn't having it and decides that if wizards always win, then she wants to be a wizard too. The boy immediately shuts her down, shouting that it's not fair, while Rabus looks on with a knowing smile. Rabus greets them, commenting on how much energy they have so early in the morning. The kids immediately recognize him, shouting out a happy welcome as he gets closer. The boy looks up with big, hopeful eyes, asking what it takes to become a real wizard. But Rabus drops a major reality check, telling them they can't just become one because they feel like it. We get a glimpse of what real wizards look like. These imposing figures in dark robes, surrounded by massive, glowing, golden magic circles. Rabus explains that these guys are the peak of humanity, noble bloodlines who inherited their mysterious powers. Rabus bluntly tells the kids that, unfortunately, they don't have the right lineage to ever become wizards. The younger man behind him scolds the elder, saying he shouldn't be so harsh and crush the dreams of children. The tone shifts as the man asks Rabus if the rumors going around are actually true. Rabus's expression flips from playful to dead serious in an instant as he looks toward the village. The man confirms the terrifying news. A monster has actually appeared nearby. Rabus just stands there silently, absorbing the weight of what that means for their little village. Rabus confirms the rumor is true, and the man's face goes pale as he lets out a worried gasp. This is clearly very bad news for everyone. Apparently, a villager named Rop came across the beast at the entrance of the village last night. The news is so big it feels like it takes up the whole panel, the kind of thing that keeps people up at night. And the description of the monster is pure nightmare fuel. We're talking a leopard the size of a house, covered in pitch-black shadows and crackling with purple energy. This is not a wild animal, it's a magical predator. A woman comforts the young girl, telling them not to worry because the village chief has already gone to the city. He's heading there specifically to request a wizard to come deal with the threat. The woman seems relieved, confident that a wizard will definitely be able to take care of the monster. She has that classic hopeful villager look, putting all her trust in the power of the nobility. The man places a protective hand on the girl's head, warning both kids to stay out of the forest for the time being. The boy looks serious now, realizing the danger is very, very real. The man reminds them that killing a monster is practically impossible without a wizard's help. He then looks toward the distant hills outside the village and asks about someone specific. Rabus asks if all the villagers have been warned about the monster. The man confirms that everyone knows, but his mind is clearly on someone else. Rabus looks confused for a second, leaning on his walking stick and asking who he means. The man clarifies that he's talking about the shepherd living up on Hizril Hill. The scene shifts to a wide shot of the peaceful-looking village under a bright blue sky, but the focus is on this shepherd, a guy whose name apparently carries some serious weight around here. The scene transitions to the lush green hills where the shepherd, a silver-haired young man named Turan, is just lounging in the grass. A white bunny hops by, perfectly peaceful despite the monster lurking nearby. Turan is lying flat on his back, staring up at the clouds with a completely bored expression. He looks like he doesn't have a single care in the world, which is a huge contrast to the panicked villagers down below. He groans about how incredibly boring his life is. Around him, his sheep are scattered across the field, just doing their thing while he contemplates the pointlessness of his daily routine. From an overhead view, we see just how isolated he is, lying among his flock. To him, every single day is the exact same scenery and the same boring work. The camera pans over his small house and the surrounding hills. He's trapped in a loop of the same day over and over, and you can tell he's itching for something, anything, to happen. Turin sighs, joking to himself that at this rate he's going to completely forget how to talk. He looks like a guy who's been living in his own head for way too long. Suddenly, a shadow falls over him, and an old voice calls him a pathetic brat. Turan opens one eye, looking completely unbothered by the sudden interruption. It's Grandpa Robus, standing over him while Turan is still sprawled out on his rock. Robus scolds him for slacking off before the sun has even started to set. Turan doesn't even move, just telling Rebus to get out of the way because he's blocking his sunlight. Rebus huffs, clearly annoyed by the young man's total lack of manners. Rebus asks if Turan is still holding a grudge over some incident from back in the day. Turan finally cracks a mischievous smirk as he repeats the question back to him. Turan reminds him exactly what happened. When his mother died, Rebus tried to quietly turn their sheep into shared village property. Rebus clears his throat awkwardly, clearly caught in his old lie. Turan sits up, confirming that he is definitely still holding that grudge. He makes it clear he isn't generous enough to share his mother's inheritance with a greedy village elder. He tells Rebus they aren't close enough for small talk, so the old man should just say what he wants and then get lost. Rebus is fuming, calling him a little brat for being so disrespectful. Turan's eyes suddenly go wide and sharp, his expression turning cold as Rebus drops the news. He asks what he just said. The boredom completely vanished from his face. Rebus repeats himself. A monster has appeared. Turan is already on his feet, looking toward the forest with an intense, focused gaze that makes him look way more dangerous than a simple shepherd. Turan goes back to petting one of his sheep while Rebus explains the situation. He tells him about the giant shadow leopard that Rop found and that he's warning everyone on his way back from the hill. Rebus notes that Turan doesn't seem scared at all, even though his hill is the most likely target for a roaming monster. Turan just keeps his hand on the sheep, looking thoughtful. Rebus tells him the village chief is getting a wizard and warns him to be careful. Turan watches the old man walk away, his mind clearly already miles ahead of the warning. Rebus stops and admits he actually came all the way up here because he was worried about Turan personally. He tells him he's not very honest with himself, which is a classic old man way of showing affection. Turan just scoffs at that, telling Rebus to admit he was worried about the sheep, not him. Rebus blows a fuse and storms off, shouting in frustration as he stomps down the hill. Turan watches him go with a tiny, genuine smile on his face. He tells the old man to just get lost if he's done talking, maintaining his cool exterior right until the end. But as soon as he's alone, Turan's expression turns dark and insulting. He mutters that Rebus's breath stinks so bad his nose is going to rot, looking completely disgusted. We see Turan standing alone in the field, petting a sheep as Rebus disappears into the distance. The peaceful atmosphere feels a lot more tense now that the monster is in play. Turan looks toward the horizon, his eyes narrowed. He simply says the word monsters, as if he's evaluating a personal rival rather than some scary myth. He thinks to himself about the nature of these beasts' creatures that wield mysterious power and magic. He notes that if humans have wizards, then the beasts have monsters. The text box emphasizes the parallel. Wizards are the human equivalent of these monsters. It suggests a level of power that ordinary people can't even begin to touch. Turan starts walking, his sandals crunching on the grass. He's excited because a wizard is actually coming to this backwater village, and he finally gets to see one in person. He's skeptical, though. He knows that if it's just a rural village chief calling, the wizard they get might not actually be anything special. He's looking for something real. Turan has a confident, almost arrogant smirk as he wonders just how strong these great beings actually are. He looks like a guy who's been waiting for a challenge his entire life. Suddenly, his expression shifts. He stops mid-thought and his nose twitches. He's just caught a scent on the wind that definitely shouldn't be there. He realizes what the smell is, his eyes going wide with shock. He sensed something that has immediately put him on high alert. He stands silhouetted against the bright sky, stating matter-of-factly that it's blood. The boredom is gone. The predator in him has just woken up. The scene shifts to the dark, orange-tinted forest as the sun begins to set. The wind howls through the trees, creating a spooky, ominous atmosphere. Turan is moving through the woods, his footsteps tapping on the dirt path. He's following the scent, his face set in a grim, determined line. He's sure he's heading in the right direction, scanning the area as he moves deeper into the trees. The lighting here is beautiful but eerie, perfectly setting the mood for what's coming. Turan's expression hardens as he spots something on the ground ahead. He knows he's found the source, and it's definitely not a wounded animal. He comes to a sudden halt, his sandal digging into the dirt. He's found what he was looking for, and it's so much worse than he imagined. Turan stares down at the scene, his face bathed in the warm light of the setting sun. There's a look of grim recognition in his eyes as he sees the victim. It's Rebus. The old man is lying in a pool of blood, his body mangled. Turan stands over him, looking down at the man who was just yelling at him minutes ago. Turan looks genuinely upset, recalling how Rebus had just told him to be careful. He realizes with a heavy heart that the source of that blood smell was his old friend. He puts a hand to his chin, analyzing the carnage. He notes that these wounds aren't something an ordinary wild animal could make. They're too clean, too powerful. He looks at Ravus's shredded white cloak, confirming his suspicion. He says with a low, dangerous voice that it has to be the monster. A sudden sense of danger hits him as he senses something behind him. His eyes dart to the side, catching a movement in the shadows of the forest. A massive, purple, armored claw slams into the ground, cracking the earth. It has a glowing yellow eye embedded in the wrist. This thing is definitely magical, and it is definitely hostile. The monster fully reveals itself. It's a massive, hulking beast covered in stone-like armor and glowing with yellow energy. It lets out a guttural growl as it looms over Turan. Turan stands his ground as the beast roars, its energy flaring up around its body. The scale difference is insane. The monster is absolutely huge compared to the lone shepherd. We get a dramatic white panel with a single question asking just how strong a monster really is. This is setting the stage for the power scale of the fight we're about to see. Time for a flashback. A young Turan is sitting at a table, asking his dad if it's true that even adults can't beat monsters. His dad looks back with a very serious expression. His dad explains that they are insanely strong. He says that if ordinary adults rush in, they won't even be able to collect their bones afterward. That's a pretty grim way to explain things to a kid. The kid looks down at his food, worried about what will happen to their village. His dad puts a comforting hand on his arm and tells him not to worry. His dad reassures him that the village chief will bring a wizard, and that wizard will be the one to subjugate the monster. They have total faith in the magic users. Young Turan looks up with awe, asking if the wizard will really win and punish the monster. He clearly views wizards as unstoppable superheroes. His dad smiles and confirms it, explaining that wizards are great beings born with the power of magic. He paints them as a different class of existence entirely. We see the monster again, roaring with its mouth wide open, its glowing yellow eyes pulsing with power. The narrator says they can kill the monster with a single word. Back in the present, Turan is standing in front of the beast, looking remarkably calm. He's not a scared kid anymore. He's got his own plan. Turan cracks a slight, confident smirk. He's about to test that single word theory himself, even though he's supposed to be just a commoner. He commands it to die, his eye glowing with a sharp light. Suddenly, a spear-like projectile of light slams into the monster's head with a massive impact. The monster flinches as the energy hits, but it doesn't go down. It just growls louder, its yellow markings glowing even brighter as it absorbs the attack. Turan is standing there, surrounded by a red, fiery aura of energy. He looks like he's just getting started, despite his first attack failing to do much. He puts a hand to his chin, looking genuinely disappointed. He mutters to himself that it's not working, clearly expecting his command to have a bit more kick to it. The monster lunges at him with incredible speed, its heavy body smashing into the ground where he was just standing. Dust and debris fly everywhere. Turan yells for it to stop, his eyes flashing with power again. He's trying to command the beast's movements with just his voice, which is a wild move for a non-wizard. The monster actually skids to a halt, its claws digging deep into the forest floor. The command worked for a split second, showing that Turan has some serious mojo. Turan realizes his limits, noting that while he knew killing it wouldn't work with just a word, it's annoying that the beast can't even be fully stopped for long. The beast recovers instantly, lunging forward with its glowing claws outstretched. Turan is forced to dodge, leaping back as the creature tears up the earth. Turan lands and sighs, deciding that in that case he has to change his tactics. He's done playing around with simple verbal commands. He reaches into a pouch and pulls out a small, ordinary-looking rock. He grips it tight, his expression turning cold and calculated. He says he's going to do what a shepherd does, while spinning a leather sling in his hand. He's about to turn a simple farm tool into a weapon of mass destruction. The monster doesn't care about his sling and charges again, its heavy footsteps shaking the ground. It looks like a freight train of fur and magic energy heading right for him. Turan starts his technique, shouting a command to harden as his hand glows with golden light. He's imbuing that little rock with some insane magical durability. He spreads his hand, and the rock begins to hum with power, surrounded by swirling blue and white energy. This is way beyond anything a commoner should be able to do. His eye glows with a brilliant yellow light as he uses his next command to make it faster. He's layering buffs on his projectile like it's an RPG. He lets the rock fly, and it leaves a massive blue and white spiral trail in its wake. The speed is so high that it creates a sonic boom, looking like a literal laser beam. Turan watches his shot, already giving the final command to pierce through. He isn't just aiming to hit the monster, he's aiming to delete it. We see his focused face as he lets out the shot. The sheer power of his magic is blowing his hair back from his face, showing the intensity of the discharge. The projectile is a literal drill of light now, spinning with incredible force. It's heading straight for the monster's head, looking completely unstoppable. The attack connects, and it's a direct hit. Blue energy arcs everywhere as the magical drill grinds into the beast's armored skull. The monster is thrown back by the impact, its massive body lifted clean off the ground. The force is so great that blood and stone shards are flying in all directions. A close-up shows the rock punching right through the beast's armor, sending a spray of dark blood into the air. That hardened command definitely did its job. The monster lets out a final, pained roar as the light from the attack explodes inside its head. It's a messy, brutal end for the village's nightmare. A massive explosion of dust and energy fills the forest as the monster finally crashes to the ground. Turan is just a shadow in the foreground, watching his work. Turan is already moving, sliding down a slope toward the fallen beast. He looks completely unfazed, like he just finished a boring chore instead of a boss fight. He smirks, telling us that he was aiming for something specific. He looks proud of his marksmanship, which is fair considering he just sniped a magical leopard with a pebble. A high-angle shot shows the monster's body lying in a massive crater. It's completely still, its energy signatures faded out. Turan really put that thing in the dirt. He finishes his sentence, saying he was aiming for the head. The monster's skull is absolutely destroyed, proving that even a shepherd's tools can be lethal in the right hands. The drill of light is still visible for a moment as it finishes its job, glowing bright against the monster's dark fur. It's a definitive game over shot. Turan stands there, looking at the dead beast with a thoughtful expression. He mutters that this is his first time using his power on a monster, which is a terrifying thing for a shepherd to say. He looks over the corpse, which is massive compared to him. He's covered in some blood spatter, but he looks more annoyed about the mess than anything else. He looks down at the beast's mangled face and wonders if he should just toss it into a valley or something. He has zero respect for the creature that just slaughtered his friend. He lets out an annoyed sound, wiping some blood from his face. He grumbles that those village bastards sure put him to work, sounding like a guy who's definitely not getting paid enough for this. Turan is standing over the dead monster, looking totally annoyed that he had to get his hands dirty. He mutters in frustration, complaining that he had to go through all this trouble just for the local townsfolk. We get an intense close-up of his eye as he reveals his secret identity to himself. He knows what he is, even if the world doesn't. He is a wizard. Time for a flashback. Turan takes us back 8 years to when he first realized he was special. He remembers seeing a log just float right up into the air in his family's workshop. Little 10-year-old Turan is in the middle of a shop, and everything is floating around him like a scene out of a magic show. He's got tools and wood drifting in the air, clearly discovering his powers for the very first time. The kid is stoked, pointing up at the ceiling and yelling for his mom to look. He shouts that the logs are flying, thinking this is the coolest thing ever. He doesn't stop at flying wood. He starts showing off that he can make fire and wind too. He's calling out for his mom again, wanting to show her all his new tricks. Tiny Turan is absolutely losing it with excitement, surrounded by floating gear and elemental magic. He tells his mom he can control the wind and fire, but her reaction is not what he expected. His mother's face is filled with pure terror as she screams for him to stop it. Turan notes that this was the very first, and the very last, time his mother ever truly got mad at him. The kid is totally confused, letting out a small, questioning sound as the magic fades and the wood drops to the floor. His mother calls his name, her voice trembling as she realizes the danger he's in. She kneels down to his level, her hand on his shoulder as she tries to calm him down. She invites him to have a serious chat, her expression soft but incredibly worried. She asks him if he wants to live a long, happy life with her. Little Turan, looking hopeful and innocent, immediately says yes. She makes him promise right then and there to never use those powers again. She looks at him with such gravity that you know this isn't just about being a normal kid. She doubles down on the warning, telling him he must never use his power in front of other people. She looks like she's carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Turan asks why, and his mom starts explaining the dark history of their world. She brings up the old stories about nobles and knights that every kid hears. We see a close-up of young Turan's focused eye as he listens intently. He tells us he remembers every single word of that conversation. She explains that while everyone with magic is called a wizard, there's a massive, hidden divide between the groups. Nobles and knights might use the same powers, but they are born into completely different worlds. We get a visual of the divine Freya bloodline being mixed with humans to create knights. Nobles are pure descendants of divine beings, while knights are the mixed bloods who are seen as lesser. Back in a memory, his mom asks if he remembers the lesson while he sits on the floor with a shepherd's crook. He confirms with a simple yes, already accepting his destiny to hide. His mother walks away, telling him that she's going to explain the real, terrifying reason why he can never show his face as a wizard. The atmosphere is heavy with the secret she's about to dump on him. She explains that since his father was a knight, Turan inherited those same powers. She warns him about evil nobles who treat knights as nothing more than disposable slaves. Young Turan looks on as she tells him flat out that nobody can ever know what he truly is. If they find out he's a wizard, his peaceful life is completely over. She looks him right in the eye, pleading for a promise that he'll stay hidden. You can see the desperation in her face. She's trying to save his life. A title card drops to tell us that 8 whole years have passed since that life-changing talk. Turan has grown up, but he is definitely not forgotten. Adult Turan stands alone in his quiet house, looking out at the mountains. He tells us he has kept that promise to his mother every single day. He reaches out to close a curtain, reaffirming his internal vow. To him, that promise is sacred and will never be broken. He looks out the window with a stoic expression, repeating that he has no desire to reveal himself. He's perfectly content being a nobody shepherd. The scene pans out to show his isolated mountain home. He's lived his life avoiding the world below, just like he promised. Suddenly, his peace is shattered by a violent pounding on his door. He looks over, his eye narrowing in annoyance at the rude interruption. Someone outside is absolutely hammering on the wood, shouting for Turan to come out. This is definitely not a friendly social visit. Turan stands by the door, already looking done with whatever drama is waiting for him. He lets out a frustrated sigh as the pounding continues. Turan opens the door to find a whole mob of angry villagers waiting for him. They've got sticks and mean looks, looking like they're ready to start a full-on riot. Instead of being scared, Turan literally yawns in their faces. He asks them what's up while covering his mouth, showing zero respect for their numbers. He cuts right to the chase, asking if they're actually trying to blame him for Rebus's death. The villagers are all bark, but Turan is clearly the bite. The leader of the group yells yes and grabs Turan by the collar, calling him shameless. Turan doesn't even blink as he's being manhandled. The big guy screams that Turan hurt the old man and left him as monster bait. He's fuming, trying to act like a hero for the mob. Turan just leans back and looks at the guy with a blank stare. He's not even trying to defend himself because he knows exactly what's really going on here. Turan looks at the group and tells them he knows exactly why they're trying to frame him. The villagers behind the leader look a bit unsettled by his confidence. He hits them where it hurts, saying they let Rebus die because they were too scared to fight the monster themselves. He points out that framing him is just their way of dealing with their own cowardice. Turan smirks while the guy is still holding his shirt. He tells him that shifting the blame onto him is just the easy way out for all of them. The leader loses his mind, screaming Turan's name and winding up a massive punch. He's done talking and is going straight for the kill. The big guy throws a punch with all his weight, but Turan effortlessly dodges. He's moving with a speed that shouldn't be possible for a regular shepherd. A text box appears over Turan's cold face, simply reading magic. He's about to break his promise, just for a second. Pow! Turan lands a brutal counterpunch right on the big guy's chin, sending a spray of blood into the air. He thinks to himself that having magic is certainly convenient. He walks through the mob as they start to collapse like dominoes. He explains that if he strongly wishes for something, his mana makes it happen, like an elite version of reality warping. Turan leans in and whispers a chilling command for them to fall over. His eyes are glowing with a faint, dangerous light. Immediately, one of the villagers trips on nothing and faceplants into the dirt. Turan thinks that he doesn't even need to start a fire to win this. He moves through the group like a blur, needing just a little bit of magic to tip the scales. They don't even realize they're being hit. He taps a guy's arm, using just enough subtle magic so that it's not obvious that he's a wizard. He's dismantling a mob with parlor tricks. Turan catches a villager's stick mid-swing, his grip like iron. He notes that he's using just enough force to stop them, not to kill them. He lands a solid kick on another guy while swatting a second away. He's completely dominating the fight without breaking a sweat. The whole group is in a chaotic heap around him as he continues to parry and strike. He looks like a pro boxer in a daycare center. We see broken wooden clubs flying through the air with a loud crack. Turan has literally disarmed the entire militia. One of the villagers lies flat on his back, groaning in pain as the fight ends. Turan reminds us that for 8 long years, he's managed to stay a secret. From a high angle, we see Turan standing in the middle of a dozen defeated men. He's the only one left standing, having hidden his true power once again. He looks down at the pile of groaning bodies with a sigh. He tells them they should have saved that energy for Rebus's funeral instead of wasting it on him. 2 village women are watching from a distance, looking absolutely terrified. Turan asks if they want a round 2, and they immediately start stuttering that they're not there to fight. One of the women admits they just came to see him, looking a bit smitten despite the violence. Turan just stares back without saying a word. He tells them to take the idiots on the ground back to the village with them. He's completely done with the whole situation. Back inside his home, Turan looks out the window, finally having some peace. But he knows this won't be the end of it. He looks tired as he realizes the town is going to be in an uproar again. He knows they'll use this fight as an excuse to hike up prices and rip him off next time he goes to trade. He tosses his cloak aside, deciding he'll just keep beating them up until he gets a fair deal. He's basically become the village's unofficial final boss. Just as he's settling in, there's another violent pounding on the door. He closes his eyes in disbelief, thinking this day will never end. He looks toward the door, muttering that whoever is out there must be insane to come back for more punishment. He looks ready to actually hurt someone this time. A close-up shows a large, gloved fist pounding rhythmically on the wood. This person isn't angry, they're just persistent. Turan rips the door open, ready to scream at the top of his lungs. He's had enough of the village's nonsense. He freezes as he sees who's actually there. Standing in his doorway is a massive, broad-shouldered man who definitely isn't one of the local thugs. The stranger is incredibly polite, apologizing for the bad timing. He looks like a seasoned warrior with a scar on his face, but he's asking for a favor. Turin is thrown off by the change in tone. He asks if he's a traveler while trying to process this guy's calm vibe compared to the previous mob. The man apologizes again, having seen the uninvited guests on the way in. He's got a friendly but powerful presence that makes him seem dangerous and reliable at the same time. Turin thinks to himself that even though he was taught manners, he hasn't used them in years. Being nice back to this guy feels incredibly awkward for him. He notices the high-quality sword at the man's hip. He's immediately suspicious of why such a well-armed traveler is hanging out in a sleepy old town. The man starts asking about an inn, but Turin's stomach lets out an earth-shattering growl. The whole serious vibe is instantly ruined by his hunger. Turin lets out an embarrassed sigh, looking away. His body just completely sold him out in front of the cool stranger. He sighs and tells the guy to just come in. The camera pans out to show his humble mountain house under a bright sky. We see a beautiful spread of food on the table: eggs, bread, and meat. It looks way too good for a simple shepherd's meal. The traveler is absolutely going to town on the food, calling it a feast. Turin tries to act humble, saying they're not well off and don't have much. The man is surprised that Turin has never met anyone from outside the town. Turin confirms it's true, having spent his whole life on this hill. The traveler takes a big swig from his mug, laughing about how rare tourists are. He seems to be really enjoying himself, despite the isolated location. We get a sharp close-up of the traveler's eye as he watches Turin carefully. He's definitely not just here for a meal, he's studying the shepherd. Turin takes a long drink from his own mug, trying to look normal. The traveler mutters an interesting that makes the tension spike. Turin pauses with the mug at his lips, asking what he means. He's starting to realize this guy might be more than he seems. The traveler compliments Turin's manners, saying his parents must have taught him well. He's being almost too polite, which is a big red flag in Turin's book. Turin looks at the guest bed, mentioning that his mom died of an illness a few years back. He's being honest, but keeping his guard up. The man offers a respectful prayer, saying she must be in heaven because she raised such a proud son. He's very charismatic, which only makes Turin more suspicious. Turin stands up to clear the table, thanking the man. He tells him he's just living the way his mom told him to, no more, no less. The traveler finally drops the bomb. He's here for a favor. He looks serious now, the friendly tourist act finally slipping. Turin stops and asks what kind of favor. The man explains that people were looking for someone to deal with the monster puma terrorizing the area. The traveler drops the biggest secret yet. He is a wizard. Turin stares at him, his face illuminated by the firelight as the gravity of the situation sinks in. Turin realizes this is the guy the village elder went to fetch. He asks for confirmation, and the man simply says, "That's right." The wizard traveler takes a bite of food and says he has a question for Turin now. The wizard says he senses a monster in the area, but he doesn't actually see one, and he's looking directly at Turin while he says it. He finds it weird that Turin knows about the elder and the monster, yet remains completely calm and isn't running away. His gaze is absolutely piercing. He continues chewing his food and asks Turin that if the monster went for a human, it would be him. So why isn't he scared? He keeps going, saying Turin seems awfully brave for a shepherd who's never even left town. He's definitely onto him. The wizard looks up with a sharp expression and demands to know who he really is. Flashback. We see a young Turin asking his mom why no one can know that he's a wizard. Young Turin looks confused, and his mom explains it's because of the bad nobles. She uses a harsh analogy. If nobles are shepherds, then knights are the dogs they keep. We see a visual of nobles in a church-like setting. Mom explains they might treat you like family, but they will sacrifice you without a second thought if necessary. Mom says she doesn't want that life for Turin. She asks if he wants to keep living with her, and he yells, yes. A slightly older Turin looks solemn as his mom repeats the warning, nobody can know that you are a wizard. She adds a final, chilling detail, telling him to be especially careful around other wizards. If they find out, they will separate them and turn him into their shepherd dog, ready to be discarded at any moment. Adult Turin looks at the wizard across the table. He's silent, absorbing the threat. A text bubble on a white background tells us that to avoid being found out as a wizard, the traveler wizard rests his hand near his sword hilt. The final text box reveals the grim reality. You might have to kill people. Man, things just took a dark turn. Turin is thinking to himself that if he has to keep his wizard identity a secret, he might have to do something extreme. He's looking dead serious at the traveler, Kiorn, while contemplating if he actually has to kill this man to stay hidden. The tension in the room is thick enough to cut with a knife. Turin looks completely resigned to the fact that his peaceful life as a shepherd might be over. He's ready to throw down if it means protecting his secret. Kiorn leans in, his sharp eye locked onto Turin. He asks why he can't answer, clearly picking up on the fact that this simple shepherd is hiding something massive. The silence stretches on as Kiorn stares him down, looking like a total pro who's seen it all. You can tell he's just waiting for Turin to crack under the pressure. Suddenly, Kiorn just bursts out laughing. He tells Turin that making a face like that just makes his joke awkward, completely diffusing the murder vibes in the room. Turin is just standing there looking confused as hell. He asks if it was a joke, probably feeling like he just avoided a death sentence by a hair. Kiorn starts cracking up, while Turin bluntly tells him he doesn't really have a good sense of humor. Kiorn apologizes, realizing he might have accidentally terrified the poor kid. Turin admits it's his first time ever hearing a wizard joke, which is why I caught him so off guard. Kiorn admits he just took the teasing a little too far because Turin's reaction was so entertaining. Kiorn finally offers a handshake, realizing they still haven't introduced themselves properly. He's back to being the friendly traveler, which is a relief for everyone involved. He introduces himself as Kiorn, a wanderer, with a polite, bow-like stance. He looks way more respectable now that he's not threatening to uncover deep secrets. They finally shake hands, and the vibes are totally reset. Turin apologizes for not introducing himself first, looking a lot more relaxed now. He introduces himself as Turin, a shepherd, while they shake on it. It's a pretty historic moment. A hidden wizard knight and a veteran knight officially meeting for the first time. They get back to their meal, and Turin mentions he's only 18 years old. Kiorn drops a bombshell that he's actually turning 75 this year, which is insane given how young he looks. Kiorn explains the perks of the job. Wizards age way slower than regular people and live a lot longer. It must be nice to look like a guy in his prime when you're basically a great-grandfather. Turin asks how he ended up wandering the world, and Kiorn tells him he served the Arabian family for 60 long years before finally moving on. That's a serious career commitment right there. He says in his later years, he just wanted to roam around without settling down. Turin smiles, thinking that a life of constant adventure sounds pretty romantic. The two of them just enjoy a harmless, peaceful conversation over dinner. It's a rare moment of genuine connection for Turin, who's been lonely on this hill for years. Kiorn thinks to himself that being with a good person like Turin makes everything more enjoyable. He's got a warm smile on his face, clearly appreciating the hospitality. The camera pans out to show them chatting deep into the night under the glow of the lamp. Kiorn realizes he didn't even notice how much time was passing because he was having such a good time. Suddenly, the birds start chirping and the sun begins to peek through the window. Kiorn is surprised that it's already gotten so late, realizing they talked through the entire night. Kiorn stands up, ready to head out as the sun fully rises. He realizes he spent way more time here than he intended, but he doesn't seem to regret it one bit. He places a silver coin on the table. Arabian silver, the purest kind. He says it should be more than enough to cover the cost of the feast he just enjoyed. Turin accepts the payment gracefully and wishes Kiorn a smooth hunt. Kiorn tells him not to act like they'll never meet again, implying he's definitely coming back. He jokes that he might come by a few more times to mooch off him as he heads toward the door. He's officially made a new friend, even if he is a world-class wanderer. We get a wide, beautiful shot of the valley and the town as morning fully breaks. It looks like a new beginning for everyone involved. Back on the hill, the sheep are already out and grazing in the sunshine. Everything seems perfectly normal again, but Turin knows his world has changed. Turin lets out a simple command to gather. His voice is calm but authoritative, showing his expertise as a shepherd. The sheep immediately react, their ears perking up as they follow his lead. Even without magic, this guy is a pro at his job. The bright blue sky is clear, matching Turin's mood as he goes about his morning routine. It's a peaceful contrast to the high-stakes conversation he just had. Turin leads his flock across the hills, standing tall with his crook. He's back to being the lone shepherd, but he's carrying a lot more on his mind now. He reflects on the fact that this was his first time meeting another wizard in person. He's surprised by how comfortable the conversation felt after years of isolation. Turin pets one of his sheep, thinking about the ease and humor Kiorn had. It's a total shift from the way he expected other high-level magic users to act. He realizes Kiorn is probably the best adult he's ever met in his entire life. That's a high bar considering he usually only deals with grumpy village elders. We get a quick flashback to little Turin with his mother. He realizes that Kiorn really was a good person, someone he could actually trust. He thinks about how he always assumed knights were just emotionless hunting dogs used by nobles. Meeting Kiorn has completely shattered that stereotype for him. Anyway, now Turin has a logistical problem. How is he going to tell Kiorn the truth? He needs to explain that there actually aren't any more monsters left on this hill. The scene shifts to the dark forest where the trails are covered in shadows. The text box reminds us that, as far as anyone knows, the monsters are gone. Kiorn is deep in the woods, his expression turning serious again. He mutters, "That's strange," clearly picking up on something that doesn't add up. He finds a tree stump and scans the area for any sign of the beast. He thinks there are traces of a battle, but he can't feel a monster's presence, which is getting him suspicious. He stands by a massive tree with a huge gash in the bark. He wonders if someone already hunted the monster before he could even get here. Kiorn looks down a dark hole, wondering who in the world could have hunted it so cleanly. He starts to think the village chief might have hired another wizard behind his back. He lets out a sigh of relief, thinking that as long as someone made things safe, that's all that really matters. He's a good person through and through, focused on safety first. Suddenly, a massive shock hits him. He reacts with surprise, his eyes going wide as he senses an overwhelming, evil presence nearby. Kjorn whips around with lightning speed, his hand already moving toward his weapon. He wasn't alone in these woods after all. A terrifying, armored monster claw slams into the dirt with a heavy thud. It's got that creepy glowing eye on the wrist again. This is bad news. The creature fully emerges, a massive face with multiple rows of teeth and dozens of writhing tongues. This thing looks like it crawled straight out of a horror movie. Kjorn stands completely dwarfed by the massive beast, which is towering over the trees. He realizes he's up against a monster's wraith, something far worse than a living leopard. Kjorn is baffled, wondering who would be stupid enough to let something like this happen. A wraith only forms when a monster's mana isn't properly dealt with after its death. The monster lunges, its massive claws swiping through the air with a terrifying whoosh. Kjorn is in for the fight of his life. Bam! The attack connects with an explosion of light and dust. Kjorn is forced to block, and you can see the sheer power of the impact shaking the whole forest. Kjorn explains the lore. If you don't absorb or disperse the mana from a corpse, it turns into a wraith. He notes that any wizard who hunts monsters would definitely know this basic rule. Kjorn is sent flying back by the force of the beast, barely managing to keep his footing. He's realized something grim. The person who killed the first monster did this on purpose. He skids across the ground, thinking that the one who killed the monster was definitely a wizard, so why in the world would they intentionally leave it to become a wraith? The beast looms over him, a massive, hulking mountain of dark energy. Kjorn thinks it couldn't have been a novice knight, because they wouldn't have even been able to kill the original monster. Kjorn charges mana into his hands, the air around him crackling with golden energy. He wonders if the mysterious hunter had some other, darker intention. He shouts that either way, he has to destroy it, his face determined as he prepares his ultimate move. He's not backing down, even if the odds are totally stacked against him. Kjorn manifests a massive, glowing energy spear that's crackling with electricity. He looks like a literal god of war right now, ready to end this nightmare. He lets out a yell and hurls the spear with everything he's got. The projectile leaves a massive trail of light as it screams toward the monster. The spear hits the monster square in the chest with a massive boom. But wait, something's wrong. The monster doesn't even flinch, and Kjorn realizes the hit did 0 damage. Kjorn's face is filled with pure shock as he realizes his magic was nullified. The monster's mana is vastly stronger than his own, which shouldn't even be possible. Suddenly, the beast just vanishes into thin air. Kjorn yells in disbelief, scanning the woods frantically. He looks around, wondering if the creature is trying to counter his magic with its own magical abilities. This thing is way smarter than a typical beast. The ground beneath his feet starts to bubble with black shadows and purple energy. He's standing right in a trap, and he didn't even realize it. The monster reappears directly behind him, looming over his shoulder with its glowing eyes. This is a classic, "it's right behind me, isn't it?" moment, and it's terrifying. The monster slams its massive arm down on Kjorn with a violent wham. He lets out a painful yell as he's smashed into the earth. Kjorn is coughing up blood, his face battered and bruised. He realizes with horror that this isn't a level a mere knight can contend with. You'd need to be a noble to even have a chance. He skids through the dirt, totally beaten and broken. The scale of this fight was just way too much for him to handle alone. Kjorn huffs for breath, his eyes half closed as he realizes he's in serious trouble. He never expected to run into a monster wraith of this caliber in such a remote place. The beast stands over its prey, glowing with dark purple energy. Kjorn looks up at it, thinking to himself that this is finally as far as he goes. He gives a grim side eye to the beast, refusing to go down without a final act of defiance. Even at death's door, this guy has got serious pride. He grits his teeth, promising that he's not going to die obediently. He roars that even if he dies, he'll take the beast with him, readying one last suicidal mana burst. Kjorn concentrates every last drop of his mana into his hand, which is glowing with a blinding yellow light. He's planning to stab the beast directly the moment it lunges for the kill. The monster doesn't hesitate and dives in, its claws ready to shred him. It's a do-or-die moment, and time seems to slow down to a crawl. Kjorn lets out a final, desperate yell as he prepares his last-ditch attack. He's putting his entire life into this one strike. Suddenly, something hits the monster from above. A massive, spiraling drill of blue energy slams into the beast's head, stopping its charge instantly. A blinding flash of light erupts in the middle of the dark forest. Someone just intervened in the most explosive way possible. The monster is pinned to the ground as a massive, spiraling shockwave ripples through its body. This attack is on a whole different level of power than Kjorn's spear. Kjorn just stares in total disbelief, his eyes wide as he looks at the source of the blast. He can't believe what he's seeing. A massive boulder is now lodged in the monster's head, pinning it to the ground. Turan is standing nearby, looking totally unfazed. Turan calmly asks if he's alright as Kjorn just gawks at him in shock. The simple shepherd just one-shotted a noble-level wraith with a rock. Turan smirks, telling him that a shepherd's joke is pretty startling too. He's throwing Kjorn's own words back at him while standing over the dead beast. Turan starts walking toward him, spinning his sling in his hand. He's completely revealed himself now, and there's no going back to his quiet life. Kiorn looks shocked and relieved at the same time. He says, "So you were a wizard," and Turan simply confirms it with a polite, "Yes, sir." They stand in the middle of the field, the scale difference making them look like ants in the vast landscape. Kiorn asks the big question, "Why didn't you tell me?" Turan looks back, deciding to change the question instead. He asks why Kiorn helped him just now when he could have easily just walked away. Turan cracks a little smile, saying he helped because he's about to give a reason that's probably going to change Kiorn's entire outlook. The dead monster puma is lying on the floor of Turan's cabin. It's a grim trophy of the night's events, but it's finally over. They are sitting inside, and Turan asks why Kiorn is going this far for a simple village mission. Kiorn looks a bit confused, asking what he means. Turan notes that with Kiorn's skills, he could be earning way more money comfortably elsewhere. He laughs, realizing how humble this veteran knight actually is. Kiorn says that commoners are pitiful people in his eyes. Turan looks a bit offended, asking in what way with a skeptical look. Kiorn clarifies, living out here on the frontier, trembling in fear without protection, isn't their fault. He's coming from a place of genuine compassion, not arrogance. He explains that a wizard inherits the power of a god, so they should live with pride in protecting commoners. He's got that classic hero's philosophy down pat. He admits with a chuckle that not every wizard thinks the way he does. Everyone has their own thoughts and their own way of living. We get a close-up of Turan's mouth as he smiles at that sentiment. He's finally found someone who understands the weight of having power. Turan laughs, asking if everyone doesn't have their own way of living. He looks genuinely happy, finally finding an adult who isn't a total jerk. Suddenly, another massive explosion of white energy erupts. The peaceful moment is shattered instantly as something even worse arrives. Kiorn yells for Turan to listen carefully, warning him that this isn't a level they can handle. He's in total battle mode now, his hair flying in the wind. He shouts that you can't fight this kind of monster unless you're at least a noble. He tells Turan to go warn the chief and help everyone evacuate immediately. A massive monster with a giant, glowing green eye looms out of the darkness. Kiorn shouts that he'll hold it here while facing down the beast alone. Kiorn has flames erupting from his hands, looking determined but worried. He admits he talked big, but he has no idea how long he can actually last against this thing. Kiorn lets out a shocked gasp as he looks back. Something has totally caught him off guard in the middle of the chaos. Turan is standing there with a large rock floating in a bubble of blue energy. He calmly says that if that attack landed just now, he thinks they'll actually be okay. Kiorn is frozen, his thoughts racing as he looks at the kid. He wonders if he's saying that attack wasn't his full strength, his mind completely blown. He stares at Turan, realizing that a young knight hiding in the mountains can hunt a wraith that even nobles struggle with. This isn't just some lucky kid. A big text box tells us what Kiorn is seeing right now is a massive connection. This isn't just some random encounter in a tiny rural village. Turan is completely surrounded by massive floating boulders and swirling pillars of blue light. He's a one-man army, looking like a literal god of the mountain. The text says, this scene before his eyes is something special, and you can just feel the power radiating off the page. The real Turan has finally arrived. The final panel is an epic shot of Turan with a confident smirk amidst the swirling energy. He says he was curious about his limits too, and the text says he could be the wizard who turns the world upside down. Man, this is just the beginning. Turan is standing his ground against a massive, one-eyed shadow beast that's absolutely towering over the forest. The atmosphere is electric as stones and debris swirl around him, caught in his rising mana. We get a determined look from Turan as he admits he was curious about his own limits. He spent 8 years hiding, but now that the gloves are off, he's ready to see what he's actually capable of. Kiorn isn't about to let the kid go solo, charging up his hands with blazing fire. He warns Turan that no matter how much raw talent he has, this creature is on a completely different level of tough. The monster looms over Kiorn, its glowing green eye fixed on its prey. Kiorn realizes things are getting desperate and shouts that they have to join forces if they want to survive this. Kiorn unleashes a massive, swirling column of fire and wind to push the beast back. It's a desperate move to create some breathing room, but you can tell he's reaching his limit. Kiorn looks down at his glowing, trembling hand with a grim realization. He thinks to himself that in his current state, he'd only get in Turan's way, and he couldn't even react to that last attack. The old veteran is feeling his age, admitting that at this very moment, he isn't providing any real help. It's a tough pill to swallow for a legendary knight, but he's a realist through and through. He decides his new mission is to make Turan's talent bloom right here on the battlefield. Huge swirls of blue and white mana collide as the focus shifts entirely to the young shepherd's untapped power. Turan looks a bit overwhelmed, muttering a frustrated sound. He knows he's in over his head, but he's not the type to just roll over and die. Turan lunges at the giant monster, throwing everything he's got into a physical strike. Unfortunately, it does absolutely nothing, and he realizes with a sinking feeling that it's just not working. Kjorn yells out a crucial piece of advice. You can't kill a wraith with physical attacks. He's trying to coach the kid on the fly because traditional brawling isn't going to cut it against a ghost. Turan skids back across the grass, looking small compared to the hulking beast. He shouts back, asking the obvious question, then how does he kill it? Turan shouts out that he'll try fire, extending his hand as he tries to manifest some elemental magic. He's improvising now, desperate to find a weakness in the creature's shadowy armor. He adds lightning to the list, his eyes glowing with intensity as he cycles through different ideas. He's searching for any spark of power that can actually hurt this thing. A small burst of fire connects with the monster's face, but it's more of a nuisance than a killing blow. The beast just takes it and keeps on coming, looking even more annoyed. Turan stands there panting, noting that the fire isn't doing much either. Kjorn shouts back that that's not the point, trying to get him to understand the underlying mechanics of magic. Kjorn is losing his patience, explaining that establishing proper causality is a basic requirement for real magic. He's baffled that Turan doesn't even know the most fundamental common sense of being a wizard. Kjorn has a sudden realization, his eyes widening in shock. He mutters to himself as a wild theory starts to form in his head about Turan's history. He realizes that if Turan is the one who killed the original monster and left it to become a wraith, then he's never actually absorbed mana in his life. The kid is working with pure, raw talent and zero training. Kjorn changes his instructions, telling Turan not to just light a fire, but to make it, then shoot it. He's trying to teach him how to project his power instead of just letting it leak out. Turan takes off running, dodging a massive swipe from the beast. He's putting Kjorn's advice into practice immediately, showing off that insane, innate agility. A swirl of orange and yellow fire starts to concentrate in Turan's palm. He's finally focusing his mana into a single point, just like he was told. Turan stands silhouetted against the dark forest, his hand glowing like a miniature sun. Kjorn thinks to himself that while making fire is easy, controlling it usually requires years of separate training. Kjorn's jaw practically hits the floor as Turan forms a perfect fireball instantly. He thinks in disbelief that the kid can do it immediately, realizing he's watching a literal prodigy in action. Turan plants his feet firmly in the dirt, preparing to launch his first real magical attack. You can feel the power building up in this shot. It's about to get loud. He leaps into the air, his arm cocked back with a ball of pure destruction. He's not a shepherd anymore, he's a wizard delivering a death sentence. The fireball hits the monster's head with a massive explosion that fills the entire panel. The creature lets out a high-pitched scream as it's finally pushed back by something that actually hurts. The monster is completely engulfed in flames, struggling to maintain its form. Turan's attack was a direct hit, and it's doing way more damage than anyone expected. Kjorn screams at Turan to keep his mind focused and keep pouring mana into the strike. He knows if the fire goes out now, the beast will just regenerate and kill them both. Turan stands in the middle of a literal firestorm, his hands outstretched as he feeds the inferno. He looks like a master of the elements, completely in control of the chaos. We get a close-up of Turan's intense, focused eye reflected in the orange glow of the flames. He's putting every ounce of his being into this finishing move. A massive, blinding explosion of white and orange light marks the end of the struggle. The forest is illuminated for miles as the wraith is finally vaporized. Kjorn stands in the quiet aftermath, looking up at the sky. He says they won, sounding both relieved and completely exhausted. Kjorn looks at Turan with a mix of awe and respect. He notes that it was an absurdly strong wraith that should have required a noble-class wizard to take down. He gets a good look at Turan's face, still processing what he just witnessed. The kid just did the impossible without even breaking a sweat. Turan stands amidst the smoking remains of the monster, looking like he's just waking up from a dream. Kjorn is still in disbelief that a shepherd from the mountains was the one to pull this off. Kjorn tells Turan that if he doesn't want to meet another wraith, he needs to absorb the mana first. Turan just looks at him blankly and asks how he does that. Kjorn walks him through it, telling him to imagine himself draining the energy into his own body. Turan nods with a simple all right, ready to try yet another thing for the first time. Turan closes his eyes, focusing on the energy lingering in the air. He's a fast learner, and you can already see him starting to connect with the mana. Ghostly green wisps of energy start to rise from the ground, swirling around Turan's hand. He's actually doing it. He's pulling the remains of the monster's power into himself. Turan is completely bathed in a vibrant green aura as the absorption process reaches its peak. He looks like a battery being charged up with pure magical energy. His eyes fly open, and they're glowing with an eerie, brilliant green light. He's literally seeing the world through a new lens now that he's full of mana. Turan's entire silhouette is glowing green as the energy settles into his body. It's an intimidating sight, showing just how much power he just inherited from the beast. He gets a sharp, shocked look in his eye as the power hits his system. It's clearly an intense sensation that he wasn't prepared for. Kjorn watches him with a stunned expression, admitting he can't believe what he's seeing even with his own eyes. The kid is just a constant stream of miracles today. Kiorn asks if this really was his first time absorbing mana, and Turan just gives a blunt yes. He's so casual about it that it makes the whole situation even more surreal. Kiorn reflects on the nature of magic, noting that while mana usually grows slowly with age, the best way to grow is by killing monsters and taking their power. He realizes Turan has been sitting on a gold mine. We get a close-up of Kiorn's eye as he concludes that Turan's innate potential is on a different league. He's realized he's standing next to a future world changer. Turan stands tall, looking like a proper hero as the sun filters through the trees. He's finally starting to look like the noble-class wizard Kiorn keeps talking about. Kiorn calls out his name, and the kid just looks back with a simple yes. It's a quiet moment after the literal explosion of a battle. Kiorn actually bows his head, apologizing for being rude earlier. He asks Turan which house he belongs to, assuming someone this strong must come from a legendary lineage. Turan looks at him, probably wondering what he means by a house. He's just a guy who likes his sheep and his mountain, but Kiorn is clearly expecting a different answer. Suddenly, blood sprays from Kiorn's shoulder with a sickening sound. He lets out a pained gasp, caught completely off guard by a sudden injury. Kiorn looks down at his hand, which is now covered in blood. It looks like the battle took a bigger toll on his body than he let on. Back inside the house, Kiorn is sitting at the table, looking a bit worse for wear. He apologizes for making someone as esteemed as Turan help him with his wounds. Turan shuts down the esteemed talk immediately, reminding Kiorn that he's just a shepherd who doesn't even know who his father is. He's not interested in being some high and mighty noble. Turan gives him a sharp, annoyed glare and tells him to just stop it. Kiorn backs off, realizing he's hitting a nerve with all the noble talk. We see a shot of Turan's cabin on the hill, peaceful once again. Kiorn asks the million-dollar question, why would a powerful wizard like him be a shepherd? Turan explains that it was his mother's request, and as she told him to live this way until the day she died. It's clear his secret life was built on a foundation of love and protection. He explains that there are nobles below the mountain who would only use him and throw him away if they found out what he is. His mother was trying to save him from a life of slavery. Turan says his mother was wise, and Kiorn just lets out a surprised sound. It's a rare moment where Turan's simple logic catches the veteran off guard. Kiorn admits that his mother wasn't entirely wrong, looking down at the table. He's lived through enough wars to know that power is a magnet for misery. He explains that great power inevitably brings conflict, and just 20 years ago, there was a major war between the great noble houses. The world is a much darker place than Turan realizes. We get a glimpse of that war, a chaotic, orange-tinted battle with knights clashing in the fire. Kiorn was right in the middle of it, and he's clearly still haunted by the scale of the death. Kiorn delivers a chilling statistic. Out of roughly 3,000 knights in House Arabian at the time, more than 900 died. That's nearly a third of their entire force wiped out in a single conflict. Turan listens with a somber expression, realizing that the wizard life he was curious about is built on a mountain of bodies. It's a heavy reality check. Kiorn lists off the people he lost. A friend who wanted to open a laundry shop, a teacher, his own wife and son. They were all massacred by House Sahar, leaving him as the lone survivor. He notes that a knight's life can vanish more meaningfully than a commoner's, implying that their deaths are often just footnotes in some noble's political game. He's seen the worst of humanity and magic. He tells Turan that the one thing his mother was wrong about was his actual aptitude. The kid isn't just a wizard, he's something special even among the elite. Kiorn admits it's embarrassing to say this in his current state, but he's actually a knight with fairly good skill. Yet, Turan destroyed a monster wraith that he couldn't even damage. Turan looks up, asking if his mother's claim that his father was a knight was actually a lie. He's starting to realize that his parentage might be way more complicated than he thought. Kiorn stands by the door, telling Turan it would be better for him to leave this hill and go out into the world. He believes Turan's power is needed elsewhere. We get a high-angle shot of the town as Kiorn explains that humans still aren't the complete masters of the world. They need more strong protectors to keep the darkness at bay. He shows him a visual of a god-like being, explaining that other races pushed out by the gods are still watching for a chance to rise again. The peace they have is fragile and temporary. And while the monsters watch from the shadows, the nobles only keep waging war against each other. It's a cycle of self-destruction that only strong, kind people can break. Kiorn says this age desperately needs nobles like Turan. He's trying to recruit the kid into a life of responsibility and heroism. Kiorn asks point blank if he's really satisfied living as a shepherd. He's seen that spark of curiosity in Turan's eyes and he's calling it out. Turan lifts down, clearly conflicted. He's been safe and happy on his hill, but Kiorn's stories have opened up a door that he can't just close. Turan asks what he could even gain down below the mountain. Kiorn tells him that depends on what he wants, putting the power of choice back in the kid's hands. Wealth, fame, authority, family, or friendship. Kiorn lists them all off, noting that any of that is hard to obtain up here on the hill. He's offering a world of possibilities. He tells Turan to try imagining it. He could wander like Kiorn, destroying monsters and protecting people who have no one else. Or he could become an explorer of the unknown, or even be adopted into a great house to walk the path of true power. The shepherd's life is just one tiny branch on a massive tree of options. Kjorn smiles, noting that Tyran seems to be agreeing with him. The kid is clearly hooked on the idea of seeing what's beyond the horizon. The two of them stand outside by the fence, overlooking the valley. Kjorn says it would be more interesting than herding sheep here, and it's hard to argue with that. Tyran finally admits it, saying that for the first time, he's seriously curious about the world outside. The seal on his curiosity has finally been broken. Kjorn tells him he'll support every possibility he has. He's basically become a mentor figure for Tyran in the span of a single night. Suddenly, Kjorn asks a technical question. What's his bloodline ability? Tyran just looks at him with a big question mark over his head, totally lost. Kjorn laughs and apologizes, remembering that Tyran doesn't know much about magic. He's forgotten that he's talking to a total newbie despite his insane power level. He shows a visual of a golden heart, explaining that a bloodline ability is a trait nobles inherit from their ancestor, the Frans. It's what separates the true elites from the regular knights. Kjorn asks if there was any spell that felt unusually easy and simple when he used magic. He's trying to help Tyran identify his innate superpower. Tyran flexes his arm, noting that having mana just makes his physical abilities stronger. He doesn't think he has anything special beyond being a heavy hitter. He mentions that he has a good nose and is pretty good at throwing stones. Kjorn tells him that if his sense of smell is truly exceptional, that could count as a bloodline ability. Kjorn notes that being skilled with thrown weapons is a fairly common trait of House Arabian. He's connecting the dots about Tyran's fatherhood. Tyran is curious now, telling him to go on and tell him more. He's finally interested in the history of the world and where he might fit in. Tyran looks a bit thoughtful, saying he sees. He's absorbing all this lore about houses and bloodlines, and it's a lot to take in for a simple shepherd. Suddenly, Kjorn stops walking and turns away, looking a bit intense. Tyran is confused, asking why he's acting so weird all of a sudden. Kjorn thinks to himself that he might know exactly which house his abilities are closest to. He's got that look on his face like he's just solved a major puzzle. We get a close-up of Kjorn's mouth as he asks which house that is. He's leading Tyran toward a major revelation about his own identity. He tells him it's a great house as they stand by the cabin door. You can feel the weight of the name he's about to drop. We see a creepy, dark image of a hooded figure holding a bloody head. Kjorn says this house is known as Pursuers, or Hunters. This sounds like some serious dark fantasy lore. We get a terrifying, high-contrast shot of a screaming man covered in blood. The text bubble drops the hammer, telling us that this is the house that fought with House Arabian. Tyran just stares blankly, his face pale as he absorbs the news. He's just found out he might be related to a house of legendary, bloodthirsty hunters. Man, his life just got a lot more complicated. Tyran is standing there completely stunned after hearing the name of his own family line. He repeats the name House Zahar to himself, finally putting a name to the blood running through his veins. We get a close-up of his eye, and you can see the sweat beads forming on his face. The weight of being part of the Great House Zahar is clearly sinking in, and it's a lot for a mountain shepherd to process. He looks down at the grass, gulping hard as the veteran knight Kjorn stands before him. The silence is heavy, and Tyran is visibly shaken by the realization of his origins. Tyran's mind is racing with guilt, wondering if he should apologize for his family's past. He thinks to himself that even though these people are practically strangers, they are still technically his relatives. Kjorn breaks the silence, simply saying his name. The old man has a calm look on his face, while Tyran addresses him as elder, awaiting the judgment he thinks is coming. But instead of getting angry, Kjorn reaches out and places a reassuring hand on Tyran's shoulder. It's a powerful gesture that immediately cuts through the kid's panic. Kjorn reminds him that he didn't even participate in that war himself, so there's no reason for him to carry the blame. Tyran looks up, still feeling the weight of it all, but starting to listen. The veteran knight smiles, calling it an adult situation that shouldn't involve Tyran. He wisely points out that trying to wash blood with blood only leads to endless fighting. We get an intense close-up of Kjorn's eye as he turns the question back on the shepherd. He asks if Tyran has any regrets, and the kid just looks confused, asking about what. The two of them stand together in the wide, open field, looking like mentor and student. Kjorn is leading the conversation, preparing to give some life-changing advice. Kjorn explains that if Tyran leaves the mountain to pursue power, he'll inevitably be drawn to the Zahar family. He knows the kid has outstanding abilities that won't stay hidden forever. But Kjorn says with a genuine look of faith that he trusts Tyran's character. Tyran is taken aback, letting out a surprised sound as if he can't believe anyone would trust him that much. Kjorn explains his trust comes from how Tyran saved him, even at the cost of revealing the identity he'd hidden his whole life. He thinks that if someone like Tyran rose to power in House Zahar, things might actually change. Tyran is speechless, just staring at the man who was supposed to be his enemy. The idea that he could prevent a future war just by being himself is a massive concept to wrap his head around. Kjorn starts walking away, telling him there's no need to think too seriously about it yet. He reminds Tyran that he hasn't even decided if he's actually going to join his family or not. Turan lets out a small sound as he watches the old knight. He's reaching a decision in real time, fueled by Kiorn's words. He declares with a determined expression that he wants to try going down the mountain. The shepherd is finally ready to trade his crook for his true destiny. Kiorn smiles, telling him he's thought well, but he adds a catch, not right away. He wants the kid to be fully prepared before he faces the world. The wide shot shows the small cabin on the hill where they've spent the night. Turan agrees to head down only once the elder's injury has fully healed. The scene transitions to the inside of the cabin, focused on a window letting in the morning light. It's time for some serious wizard training before they hit the road. Kiorn begins his lecture, explaining that mana is the absolute requirement for magic. He calls it the key to omnipotence, which is a pretty epic way to describe fuel. Turan sits at the table, fascinated by the concept. He repeats the phrase, the key to omnipotence, soaking up the lore like a sponge. From above, we see them sitting together as Kiorn offers to explain the standards for mana. This is the foundation of Turan's real education as a wizard. Kiorn holds up 3 fingers, listing the factors of magic difficulty: bloodline, affinity, and causality. It's like Turan just walked into an advanced RPG tutorial. Turan listens intently as Kiorn explains. Bloodline, the inherent magic you're born with. This is the stuff that sets nobles apart from commoners right from birth. Kiorn points out that healing wounds would be hard for Turan because it's not his specialty. Turan nods in agreement, realizing his limits for the first time. The knight mentions the Ravista bloodline from the south, people who can heal naturally without any training. It's all about the power that comes specifically from your family tree. Turan asks about the second factor, affinity, which Kiorn describes as simple familiarity. It's about how well your mind connects with the type of magic you're using. Turan realizes he made that fireball earlier by imagining he was throwing a rock, something he's done 1,000 times as a shepherd. His familiarity with throwing things boosted his magic. Kiorn confirms this is correct, telling him he wouldn't have had that same speed or firepower if he'd just tried to make regular flames. Using what you know is the secret to high-tier combat. Kiorn looks down at the mug on the table, calling causality the most important and difficult factor to grasp. Even a veteran like him doesn't fully understand it. He uses a wild example, asking what would happen if Turan tried to kill him directly with mana. He jokes that probably just some light would shine from his head, and that would be the end of it. Kiorn's hand sparks near the mug as he explains the phenomenon of lacking causality. Without an appropriate cause, the magic just fizzles out or does something useless. The mug is surrounded by electrical discharge as he continues. When the outcome is too difficult or lacks logic, the magic simply doesn't manifest correctly. Turan looks thoughtful, saying he thinks he understands what causality is a bit. He's starting to see the logic behind the miracles he's been performing. Turan creates a small flame in his hand over the mug. He explains that shooting fire feels more natural to him than just lighting something directly, which is a perfect example of his personal affinity. Kiorn shouts in excitement, looking impressed by how fast the kid is catching on. He jokes that Turan could have easily become a scholar instead of a frontline mage. Turan wonders why he can control regular animals easily, but magical beasts are so different. Kiorn explains that the monsters have their own mana, which acts as a shield against simple commands. We get a shot from outside the window, looking at the two of them debating lore in the candlelit room. It's a peaceful scene, but they're discussing things that could change the world. Turan admits that magic is way more complicated than he thought. He realizes that a true mage needs to understand the principles and situations behind the mana, not just how to throw it around. The kid asks the big question, does his own Zahar bloodline have any special magic? He's finally ready to embrace his heritage and see what he's really inherited. Kiorn challenges him to try it once, and Turan agrees with a confident, okay, it's time for his first real test of his ancestral power. Turan closes his eyes, wishing with all his might not to be seen by others. He focuses on a desire for his sound and smell to become completely undetectable to the world. Mana ripples around Turan's face as he pours his will into the spell. You can see the intensity of his concentration as the magic begins to take hold. Kiorn blinks, looking around the room in confusion. He asks if it worked, his face filled with genuine surprise. From a top-down view, Turan is gone. There's just a faint shimmer on the rug where he was standing, showing he successfully turned invisible. Kiorn is stunned, confirming that he absolutely cannot see the boy. He mutters that he succeeded, clearly realizing just how dangerous Turan's bloodline ability really is. A close-up shows the invisible Turan's mouth as he gulps. Even he seems a bit spooked by how effective his own magic just was. The rug is empty, but you can feel Turan's presence still lingering in the room. He's completely vanished from the physical world. With a flash of light, Turan suddenly reappears. He looks a bit winded, showing that maintaining that level of stealth takes a real toll. Kiorn looks at him with a serious expression, noting it's been a while since he's seen that frightening ability. He reveals that during the war, the Arabian Knights feared Zahar's stealth above all else. He calls it an unfairly powerful ability, but warns Turan to remember that it isn't invincible. There's always a counterplay, and overconfidence will get him killed. Kiorn offers to teach him a few more magic training methods. Tyrion asks if he isn't teaching too much to someone from an enemy family, but Kiorn just smirks. Turan has a somber look as he listens to the veteran knight. He's absorbing the lessons, both magical and moral, as he prepares for his journey. Kiorn repeats his earlier sentiment. He trusts his character. He's putting aside generations of blood feud because he sees something different in the shepherd. The scene shifts to the village, where a villager is absolutely losing it. He screams, asking if Turan is really selling the sheep and leaving, looking like he's about to have a heart attack. Turan is fully geared up for travel, looking cool and collected in the middle of the village. The chief yells at him, demanding to know how he can just decide to leave without consulting them. Turan isn't having any of it, telling them they should figure out how to find a new shepherd themselves. He makes it clear that what he does with his own belongings is none of their business. He gives them a final ultimatum. Buy the sheep at a fair price right now, or he's just going to release them all and walk away. He's done being the village's servant. The chief grits his teeth, realizing that Turan isn't bluffing. He notes that if the sheep were released, the villagers would have a very hard time capturing them all. The chief is fuming, but he knows when he's beaten. He realizes that Turan is a man who keeps his word, and there's absolutely nothing to gain from irritating him further. He begrudgingly hands over a heavy bag of coins, telling Turan to just take his money and do whatever he wants. It's a bitter victory, but Turan is finally free. Turan and Kiorn walk out of the village for the last time, the mountain peaks looming behind them. They're finally heading out into the unknown world. As they walk, Turan realizes the villagers still owe Kiorn compensation for his mission. He asks if he should go back and collect it for the elder. Kiorn just smiles and says he had no intention of receiving it. He points out that Turan is the one who actually caught the magical beast anyway, so he's the one who earned the reward. Turan gives a little smirk, saying, "All right." He's ready for the next part of their conversation as they reach a crossroads in the forest. The two of them stand at the fork in the path, surrounded by tall trees. It's the end of the line for their time together, and you can feel the bittersweet vibe. Kiorn apologizes for refusing the offer to travel together, admitting he's simply more comfortable alone. He's a true wanderer at heart, and he's not ready to change his ways. Turan tells him not to worry about it, and thanks him for everything he's taught him. The shepherd has grown so much in just a few days thanks to this chance encounter. Kiorn says to take care with a warm, grandfatherly smile. It's a genuine moment of respect between two warriors from very different worlds. Turan smiles back, wishing the elder a safe journey and hoping they can meet again with smiling faces. He's truly grown fond of the old knight. The narrator tells us that the boy watched Kiorn's retreating figure for a long time. It's a lonely shot of the veteran walking down the dusty forest path. Turan has a thoughtful, somewhat sad expression as he watches his mentor go. Only later did he realize why he didn't want the old knight to use formal language with him. We get a quick flashback of little Turan following his mother through the fields. The narrator explains that the boy had secretly been yearning for a father figure his entire life. Turan stands alone on the path, watching the space where Kiorn was. He found someone who could be a real role model for the kind of man he should become. We see a close-up of the dry, dusty earth under Turan's feet. He's standing on the threshold of a new life, and the road ahead is long and uncertain. The scene shifts to a wide shot of a rocky canyon as the wind howls through the stone. It's a harsh, unforgiving landscape that Turan has to navigate alone. Turan walks through the narrow pass, looking small against the massive rock walls. He's making his way into the world beyond his mountain, just like he promised. He pulls up his white hood as the wind picks up, looking like a proper mysterious traveler now. He's alert, scanning the area for any sign of life. Suddenly, something catches his eye and he reacts with a sharp jolt. He spotted something in the distance that definitely shouldn't be in this wasteland. A group of travelers with a cart are visible far ahead on the path. Turan wonders if they are traveling merchants who go from village to village, and he decides they might be useful. He says good to himself and picks up his pace. His boots crunch on the dry ground as he heads toward the strangers. He decides to ask them for directions to the nearest city. It seems like a simple enough plan for someone new to the road. The leader of the group, a one-eyed man with a white hood, looks Turan up and down suspiciously. Turan politely explains he's traveling alone and asks about the nearest city. The man points behind him, telling Turan if he follows the road they came from, he'll reach a city called Moray. Turan nods, saying he sees. Turan thanks them for the info and starts to walk past the group. The scene looks perfectly normal, but there's a tension in the air that suggests things are about to go south. The one-eyed man shouts for him to wait, his heavy boot thudding into the dirt as he stops Turan in his tracks. The friendly conversation is officially over. The man looms over Turan, asking if he's just going to leave after getting information. The shepherd is confused, responding with a simple, "What?" The man's face is terrifying as he explains his logic. If you receive something, you should give something in return. He's clearly trying to shake down the lone traveler. Suddenly, the other men in the group draw their swords, the blades sliding out with a sharp metallic sound. Turan is now surrounded by armed thugs. Turan looks at them with a completely bored expression, asking if they're bandits. He doesn't seem even slightly bothered by the fact that he's being robbed. The leader smiles menacingly, calling Turan's attitude recklessness. He points out that in this wasteland, nobody would find it strange if someone just happened to die. One of the bandits holds a sword right to Turan's throat, telling him to take off his bag and cloak while they're being nice. He warns that killing him would just be extra work and get messy. The bandit leader looks confident, but Turan just sighs. He says he sees bandits who even kill people, his voice cold and dangerous. He has a brief memory of sitting at the table with Kiorn, the two of them bonding over their meal. It's a huge contrast to the violence he's facing now. He recalls his fireball trick from earlier, the orange flames glowing in the cabin. He knows exactly how to deal with garbage like this. The last thing he remembers is Kiorn walking away into the forest. Turan realizes he's on his own now, and it's time to show these bandits why you don't mess with a Zahar. Turan smirks from under his hood, looking totally confident. He tells the bandits he's going to use them for practice, which is a pretty bold move given he's surrounded. The bandits just burst out laughing at him. We get a close-up of one bandit's eye as he lets out a mocking scoff, completely underestimating the kid. One of the thubs mocks him, saying, "This lunatic is talking like some kind of wizard." They're all having a good laugh, clearly thinking this is going to be an easy payday. Turan doesn't even flinch, just holds out his hand as mana begins to swirl. He's preparing to show them exactly what kind of practice he had in mind. He whispers a single word, wind, and a massive, spiraling vortex of air erupts from him. The bandits are caught completely off guard, screaming in terror as they're blasted away. Turan stays calm, explaining to himself that instead of just generating wind from thin air, he's amplifying it with his hand to save mana. He's already thinking like a seasoned pro. Turan is impressed with himself, noting he didn't know he could whip up wind this strong with so little effort. The bandits are scattered on the ground, groaning in total disbelief. He's not done yet, holding his hands up as he focuses his mana again. Blue energy flickers between his fingers as he prepares for his next trick. He forms a sharp, crystalline shard of ice right out of the air. It's glowing and looks incredibly dangerous, hovering there ready to be launched. With a cool flick of his hand, more ice shards appear around him. He looks completely in control, like he's just playing a casual game of darts. One of the bandits looks up with absolute terror, seeing the magical projectiles aimed right at him. His face is sweating bullets because he knows he's about to get wrecked. Turan launches the shards with a grunt, and they strike the bandits with pinpoint precision. Blood sprays as the ice pierces through them, ending the fight in seconds. Turan reflects on the spell, thinking throwing stones might actually be faster and stronger than using water magic. He's literally comparing high-level spells to his shepherd's tools. The lead bandit is on his knees, begging for mercy now that he sees Turan as a real wizard. He's dropped his sword and is pleading for forgiveness like a coward. They start offering him anything he wants, just to spare their lives. Turan stands there looking down at them, not even slightly moved by their pathetic begging. Turan turns to walk away, looking totally bored with the whole situation. He hasn't said a word to them, which makes him even more intimidating. Suddenly, a massive explosion of light and power erupts behind him. The ground literally shatters as Turan unleashes one last definitive blow to make sure they stay down. The bandit leader stares back at the destruction with a look of pure, frozen shock. He mutters that it's impossible as he realizes just how outclassed they truly were. Turan looks back at the smoking remains of the cart, confirming they're all dead. He stands silhouetted against the fire, looking like a total badass. The last surviving bandit is trembling, promising to answer anything if Turan just spares him. He's completely broken, groveling in the dirt. Turan asks him why they would attack someone walking alone without a plan. He explains that if he was a traveler alone, he could have easily been a wizard, exactly like what just happened. He leans in close, catching the bandit off guard with his next words. The guy is sweating, wondering what's coming next. Turan notes that even when they were rude, the bandits bowed and greeted him at first. It's a weird thing to notice, but Turan seems to find some value in it. He gives the bandit a small smile and thanks him. He says the experience actually taught him something useful, which is pretty chilling coming from him. The bandit is relieved, thinking he's actually going to get spared. He desperately asks if Turan will really spare him, hope filling his face for a split second. We get a close-up of the bandit's face as blue mana starts to gather above his head. Turan's expression is hidden, but the gathering energy says it all. Flashback to Kiorn, who is giving Turan a serious warning. He tells him from now on he'll meet a lot of people, and there's one thing he absolutely wants to tell him. Kiorn tells him to never show mercy to scum like bandits who don't hesitate to harm others for profit. Turan listens intently, already carrying his backpack and preparing for his journey. We see a close-up of a sword hilt as Turan realizes he understands the reason for the advice. He's learning that the world outside his mountain is a lot more cutthroat. Back in the present, we see the bandit's body lying on the ground, blood pooled around his head. Turan stands over him, having finally finished the job he started. Turan looks up at the sky with a small smile, thinking he's stalled long enough. He's surprisingly calm for someone who just wiped out a whole group of people. He starts walking again, his boots crunching on the dry sand. Behind him, the clear wheel tracks of the bandit's cart are the only evidence that anything even happened here. The sun sets over the desert as Turan's footprints stretch out into the distance. One single thought is burned sharply into his mind after this encounter. He killed people. Turan stares ahead, his expression unreadable. He's fully acknowledging the weight of his actions as he steps into his new life. He felt guilt, but he knew he couldn't just let them go. He remembers Kjorn's warning vividly, knowing those bandits would have just targeted someone else. A group of bandits is shown looming over Turan, a reminder of the threat he just neutralized. He knows that if he hadn't acted, they would have been a danger to every traveler on this road. The narrator explains that Turan's chaotic heart slowly settled as he recalled Kjorn's teaching. He watches his boot step onto solid stone, signifying his transition from the desert to the city. Turan finally reaches the edge of a plateau and overlooks the destination. He stands tall, gazing down at the sprawling landscape with a sense of accomplishment. He lets out a sound of pure wonder. This is the first time he's seeing a real city, and the scale of it is totally blowing his mountain-born mind. We get a wide shot of the small city of Murray, with its grand white castle and clustered houses. It looks like a proper fantasy kingdom, far more advanced than his quiet village. Turan sees a small girl being led by the hand through the crowded streets, surrounded by people chatting. The buzz of the city is a huge change from the silence of the hills. He's taking in all the sights, looking at the stone walls and the bustle of city life. He's definitely a fish out of water here, but he's making the most of it. Turan is amazed by the architecture, noting how completely different it is from the village. He's standing in front of a massive building that's absolutely towering over him. He thinks to himself that now it really feels like he's come to a city. He's walking through a busy marketplace, weaving between citizens who are just going about their day. He stops at a fruit stand and politely says, "Excuse me." The shopkeeper looks up with a friendly welcome, thinking he's got a new customer. The vendor asks what he can get for him, but Turan admits he's actually not a customer. He's just looking for some information, but he's about to get a rude awakening about city life. Flashback to Kjorn explaining that no matter where you go, there's usually an inn. Turan is trying to follow that advice, but he's learning that city folks aren't always helpful. The shopkeeper's friendly face instantly turns sour as he shouts for Turan to get lost if he's not buying fruit. He's actually got a vein popping on his forehead, looking totally furious. Turan is taken aback, wondering why the guy is acting so rude. He starts thinking there must be some unspoken rule in cities about buying something before asking questions. He points at some apples and asks how much they are. The vendor says they're 2 dupit, finally giving him the time of day now that money is involved. Turan repeats the price, looking at the coins in his hand with a puzzled expression. The man notes that Turan looks like an outsider who probably doesn't know the local currency but says other coins are fine too. After paying, Turan finally asks where he can find an inn. The vendor points down the road, giving him directions behind a cape shop toward a place with a blue roof. He eventually finds it, a large wooden building with a sign that says pub and inn. Lena notes that this place is the biggest inn in the city. He walks inside and is greeted by a cheerful young woman named Lena, a member of the inn staff. She has a bright smile and welcomes him to the establishment. Lena tells him he's a handsome guest, giving him a friendly compliment. Turan just stands there with a simple smile, clearly ready for some real rest. She tells him the price is 16 dupit, and Turan immediately agrees to stay. Lena clasps her hands together with a happy grin, glad to have secured a customer. As he hands over a bag of coins, he mentions there's something he wants to ask. Lena looks intrigued, wondering what the handsome stranger has on his mind. Turan asks if there's a monster nearby with a bounty on it. Lena looks a bit surprised, repeating the word monster as if it's an unusual request for a traveler. Turan thinks to himself that he needs to kill monsters to absorb their mana and earn money, just like Kjorn suggested. He's focused on his goals and isn't wasting any time. He realizes Lena hasn't answered yet and asks her what's wrong. She's just staring at him with a polite but slightly confused expression. Lena explains that there's no such thing as free in this world. She's standing in the middle of the empty pub, giving him a reality check about how information works in the city. Turan spots some large wooden barrels and asks if they're near City Hall. He's trying to piece together where the real power in this town resides. He sits at a table with a drink, asking what that is after Lena mentions it. He's realized just how little he knows about how these bigger towns operate. Lena is shocked that he doesn't know about city halls, realizing he really is from the deep countryside. She leans on the table, looking at him like he's a total unicorn. She explains that city halls handle public affairs and are run by officials employed by the city's lord. Turan listens intently, absorbing this new level of social hierarchy. She notes that it's probably closed now since the sun is down. She tells him to head over to the city hall tomorrow if he really wants to find a monster bounty. Lena asks if he's a monster hunter too, which catches Turan off guard. He asks what a monster hunter is, proving he's still totally new to the lingo. We see a visual of a warrior surrounded by green lightning, seemingly becoming a wizard after slaying a beast. Lena explains there's a superstition that ordinary people can become wizards by hunting monsters. Turan places his hand on the table, listening as Lena calls anyone who believes in that kind of thing an idiot. Little does she know she's talking to a real one. Suddenly, a muscular guy named Maiden interjects, claiming it's a real fact that you can become a wizard by killing monsters. He's looking super confident, claiming he saw it with his own eyes. The whole pub erupts as people realize Madan is alive. He shouts that he's not dying until he actually becomes a real wizard, which is a pretty bold goal. Midan puts a heavy hand on Turan's shoulder, laughing while greeting him. Midan apologizes to Lena for the interruption, while Turan looks at him with interest. Turan asks Midan to tell him more about the part where you can become a wizard by killing monsters. He's hungry for any info on how to boost his power levels. Lena watches from the counter as she explains the logic. Wizards get stronger from hunting, so by the same principle, ordinary people might be able to start that process too. It sounds like a gamer's dream. Maiden is surrounded by his crew, all of them cheering and agreeing with him. They're a group of 4 who are convinced they can level up through monster combat. Turan is skeptical, noting that in this city, there's only the Lord's Wizard and 3 others under him. It seems like a very small, elite circle for such a big town. Midan looks at Turan's simple outfit and scoffs, saying his gear is way too shabby for hunting monsters. He asks if he even has a real weapon on him. Turan simply says he does and pulls out his leather sling. Maiden is unimpressed, noting it looks worn out like he's used it a lot, but clearly thinking it's just a toy. Turan explains that he's good at firing things the size of an egg very quickly. Maiden scoffs, thinking he could only use that to hunt small game like rabbits or foxes. Maiden mentions his team was just wishing they had one more shooter and asks Turan if he has any interest in hunting with them. Turan just stands there, looking perfectly calm. We get a close-up of Turan's smirk as he prepares to decline. He knows he's way beyond their level and doesn't need to babysit a bunch of amateurs. Turan politely declines, explaining to himself that there's absolutely no reason for him to hunt together with them. He's already lying in his bed at the inn, ready for sleep. He lets out a long sigh, thinking about what a chaotic day it's been. He looks totally exhausted, staring up at the ceiling of his dark room. He looks at his backpack sitting on the floor, still unable to believe he actually left the village. Everything is moving so fast for him now. Turan sits up and holds out his hand, sparks of blue electricity dancing between his fingers. He's wondering what's going to happen from here on out in this new world. Suddenly, there's a soft knocking sound at his door in the middle of the night. He immediately stops his magic and listens intently. Turan sits on the edge of the bed and asks who it is. He's alert and ready, even though he was just about to fall asleep. Flashback to Kiorn walking with him across a rocky wasteland. Kiorn tells him that's right as they discuss the dangers of the journey ahead. Kiorn warns him that a city isn't automatically safe, and Turan agrees that he sees. It's a lesson he's about to put into practice right now. Kiorn tells him to never let his guard down, and Turan promises he understands. He's looking back at the old knight, taking the advice to heart. Turan is standing by the door, surrounded by a glowing blue aura. He's prepared for anything as he reaches out to open the door and see who's bothering him. With a creak, he swings the door wide open. His hand is still glowing with mana, showing he wasn't taking any chances with his security. He peeks through the opening with a serious expression, ready to strike if it's an intruder. The lighting is dark and dramatic, perfectly capturing the midnight tension. He lets out a surprised sound as he sees who's actually standing there. His eyes go wide in the dim light of the hallway. It's Lena. She's standing at his door, and Turan asks her if she was asleep. She looks a bit sheepish, having bothered him so late. Turan looks at her with a blank expression, wondering what she could possibly want at this hour. Lena just stands there, looking a bit nervous but determined. Lena gives him a mischievous smirk, pulling at the bow on her chest. She asks him what he means by that, her face blushing as she takes things in a totally unexpected direction. Lena is leaning in, giving Turan a playful and somewhat seductive smirk. She asks him what he means by that, clearly enjoying the effect she's having on him late at night. Turan is completely unfazed by her charms, standing tall as Lena looks up at him with a mischievous glint in her eye. She mutters that it's exactly what it sounds like, trying to push her luck even further. Lena's intent becomes crystal clear as she steps closer. She tells him point blank that for a small amount of money, she'll do whatever he wants. She's really going for it now. Lena leans in even more, her face inches from his as she tells him not to lie about his interests. She claims she can tell what he's thinking just by looking at his face, while Turan just stares back. Suddenly, Turan's face goes totally blank and turns into a stylized, enlightened monk look, complete with a halo. He even has a tiny third eye on his forehead, signifying he's entered a state of complete mental fortitude. Lena is left hanging, her confident expression replaced by a look of pure, awkward confusion. She has no idea how to react to Turan's sudden ascension and looks like she just hit a brick wall. Flashback time. Kiorn is screaming at the top of his lungs, telling him not to do it. He looks absolutely terrified on Turan's behalf, like he's trying to save him from a disaster. Kiorn calms down and explains that you always have to be careful with inn maids and prostitutes. He bluntly warns that most of them carry sexually transmitted diseases, which is a pretty grim piece of travel advice. Turan reflects on Kiorn's words, thinking about how wizards supposedly have strong disease resistance. But the old knight warned him that he could still pass it on to another woman later, which is a serious consequence. Back in the present, Lena is fuming as she stomps down the stairs, looking totally rejected and annoyed. Turan thinks to himself that cities really aren't easy to live in after his encounters with the fruit shop and now Lena. Turan is lying face down on his bed, looking exhausted and disillusioned. He realizes that in the city, people put a price on even small bits of information and conversation, calling it pretty cold-hearted. Turan rolls over, looking up with a thoughtful expression. He's curious about Boss Maiden, the guy from earlier, and starts to wonder what's really going on with him and his group. The scene shifts to Maidan's group walking up a flight of stairs. One of his crew members asks why he was trying to bring Turan along earlier, noting that the kid didn't look like he'd be much help. Maidan smiles as he reaches the top of the stairs, confirming his crew's suspicion. He jokes that Turan had a cocky mouth, making him perfect to use as monster bait, which is a pretty dark motive. Maidan's expression softens as he remembers the look in Turan's eye. He admits that hearing about his thrown weapon made him worried because it reminded him of himself when he was young and inexperienced. One of the crew members laughs and calls Maidan too good-hearted, while Maidan just smirks. It turns out the guy isn't as ruthless as he was pretending to be. Turan has a small smile on his face as he lies in bed. He mutters to himself, thinking about the complexity of the people he's met so far in this cold-hearted city. Turan looks peaceful as he drifts off to sleep, the moonlight hitting his face. He decides that maybe the city isn't that cold-hearted after all, finding a little bit of humanity in Maidan. The next morning, Turan stands in front of a grand, multi-story building that looks like a town hall. It's a beautiful day, and he's ready to start his new life as a monster hunter. He walks inside and is greeted by a polite official at a counter. The man has a small mustache and asks with a smile how he may help. Turan looks at the official and bluntly asks if he's an official. The man is taken aback, asking Turan what he looks like instead of answering directly. Turan gets straight to business, telling the man he came to hunt monsters. The official repeats the word monsters with a shocked look, clearly not expecting this request from a young traveler. Flashback to Kyorn again, telling Turan that the world won't be kind to him. Turan looks confused, asking why that is, leading to another piece of wisdom. Kyorn explains that people have no reason to be kind to you unless you give them a reason. He tells Turan that if he wants respect, the method is actually very simple. Kyorn tells him to reveal that he's a wizard as the wind blows through Turan's hair. He explains that once people know his power, they will immediately bow their heads in respect and fear. Back in the city hall, the official hands Turan a piece of paper with a drawing of a monster. It's an official bounty, showing that the city actually does have work for hunters. Turan looks at the paper, and the official warns him that he can't take it with him. He has to look at it and hand it back. The city hall is clearly very strict about its paperwork. Turan looks at the drawing and asks if it's a crow monster. The official is offended, asking if that looks like a cat to him instead of the obviously winged creature on the page. The official gets serious, telling Turan that even though it's unlikely, he should bring the corpse back into the city. He warns that if a wizard doesn't disperse the mana, a dead monster becomes a wraith. Turan gives a knowing look, telling the man he knows that. He has first-hand experience with wraiths, so he doesn't need the lecture. We see a terrifying vision of the massive monster wraith Turan fought earlier. He thinks to himself that he can't repeat the same mistake twice. The official looks skeptical, asking Turan if he thinks knights have time to spare for simple monster hunting outside the city. He clearly doesn't think much of Turan's chances. The official explains that a knight's real job is to maintain order inside the city, not hunt beasts in the wilderness. He hands the paper back, looking totally dismissive. He calls Turan a thug and says that monster hunting is for people like him to handle. Turan stands in the busy city hall office, looking totally unbothered by the insult. The official watches as Turan walks out, muttering that another corpse is going to pile up outside the city. He's basically already written Turan's obituary. The scene cuts to a close-up of a monstrous white eye surrounded by gray fur. Something is lurking out there, and it looks like the official's prediction might come true. Bam! A massive, bloodied crow monster is slammed onto the desk in the city hall. It has a huge hole in its chest and looks completely wrecked. The official and his colleagues are absolutely losing their minds with shock. One guy has his mouth wide open, screaming that this can't be and how in the world it happened. The officials gather around the dead beast, still in total disbelief. One of them asks if he really brought it back this fast, realizing they totally underestimated the thug in front of them. Turan stands there perfectly calm, confirming that he killed it alone. The man asks him if he killed it alone, and Turan just gives a simple indeed. Turan asks how he receives the bounty, while the officials start stammering that, of course, they have to give it to him. They're practically tripping over themselves to pay him now. The official quickly hands over a heavy bag of coins, telling Turan to take it. He tells him he worked hard and should go get some rest, completely changing his tune from earlier. Turan takes the bag with a polite thank you. He's officially earned his first payout as a city hunter, and it looks like a decent haul. The officials continue to geek out over the corpse, noting that the blade wings are still completely intact. They wonder how it's even possible to bring back a blade crow in such perfect condition. The official looks at Turan with a new sense of awe and a bit of fear. He realizes the guy he called a thug is actually a high-level killing machine. Turan is still standing there, which confuses the official. He asks why he's still here, wondering what else the hunter could possibly want. Turan asks if there are any other monsters worth hunting. The official and his assistant just stare at him with blank, shocked faces, asking what he means. Turan looks at them with a completely straight face, and the official thinks to himself not to tell him he can still hunt more. He's realizing he's dealing with a total workaholic. Back at the inn, Lena brings out a huge spread of food, telling Turan these are the most expensive items on the menu. It looks like he's really celebrating his success. She shouts that he's hunted 30 monsters in just 3 days as she sets down the food. Turan has been absolutely clearing out the surrounding area at an insane pace. Lena tells him he must have made a lot of money, looking impressed by his productivity. Turan is already digging in, surrounded by bread, meat, and soup. Turan tells her that money isn't his only goal, looking thoughtful as he eats. He has a deeper purpose for all this hunting that Lena doesn't know about. We get a glimpse of Turan absorbing mana from the monsters he's killed. He notes that, thanks to all those kills, he has definitely gotten stronger over the last few days. He holds up his hand, feeling the power. Compared to when he met Kiorn, his mana has increased several-fold, showing that his prodigy growth rate is still in full effect. Turan gets a serious look, noting that he can still feel a limit with only hunting weak monsters. He's itching for a real challenge to push his powers to the next level. Lena looks at him and starts to say something, but then hesitates. Turan asks her what it is, wondering what she has on her mind. The inn's cook walks in, accusing Turan of eating everything by himself. He points at the feast while Lena looks on, asking if Turan stole a bite. The cook laughs, commenting that Turan is skinny but really can eat. He's a big, muscular guy who seems happy that someone is actually enjoying his cooking. Turan turns to the cook and tells him the food was really delicious. The cook is stoked, promising to make it even better next time. Suddenly, a hand grabs Turan by the shoulder with a heavy sound. The peaceful meal is over as a new threat enters the room. It's a group of thugs, led by a guy who asks if Turan is eating something tasty all by himself. They look like the typical neighborhood bullies. The leader calls Turan a skinny runt, clearly underestimating him. He's about to make a massive mistake. Bam! One of the thugs takes a brutal blow to the face with a loud crack. Turan has officially had enough of their nonsense. The thug screams in pain as he's sent flying back. Turan stands there, looking completely bored with the sudden violence. Turan calmly puts his hands together and asks the leader if he didn't want some charity. He's about to give them some charity in the form of a beatdown. The thug leader yells not to get cocky as he throws a punch, but Turan just coolly dodges to the side. He's moving so fast the guy can't even see him. Pow! Turan lands a solid strike on the leader's jaw with a heavy thud. He's dismantling this entire group in seconds. The leader is sent crashing into the furniture, screaming as he hits the deck. The rest of the pub is in total shock. Lena is watching from behind the counter, her eyes wide as another thud rings out. She's witnessing a masterclass in hand-to-hand combat. A close-up shows Turan holding the leader's face, staring him down with an intense expression. He's completely dominant in this fight. With a final crack, the thug leader is sent face-planting into the floor, groaning in pain. Turan is the only one left standing. Lena has a wide-eyed, terrified expression, screaming at Turan not to. She's worried about the chaos he's causing in her inn. She continues her sentence, screaming at him not to fight in the inn as she stands in the middle of the carnage. She looks more scared of the repair bill than the actual violence. Suddenly, Maiden appears and offers a deep bow. He sincerely apologizes, taking full responsibility for his group's behavior. Later that night, Turan is back in his room, looking at his backpack. He mutters that he gave both of them a proper scolding, sounding like a tired dad. Turan is talking to Madan, telling him that he thinks they got jealous when they saw him. He admits that they've been tight on money lately, explaining why they tried to shake him down. Maiden turns to his two subordinates and yells for them to apologize already. They both bow low, stammering out a terrified, "Sorry." Maiden looks down, admitting to Turan that things have been hard for them. He explains that they've been limited in what they can do as monster hunters. Maiden clenches his fist, worrying that in about 3 days they won't even be able to pay the room fee, but he quickly adds that it's their own problem to deal with. Turan simply holds out a heavy bag toward Maiden. He's actually offering them financial help, which is a total 180 from his earlier attitude. Maiden is stunned, asking why. Turan explains it's repayment for the kindness Maiden showed earlier when he tried to bring him along to keep him safe. Maiden is speechless, asking how he knew. Turan just gives a calm, knowing look, having realized Maiden's true character. Maiden smiles brightly, telling Turan to give him some information as repayment instead. He says information is what he's best at and promises to tell Turan everything he knows. We get a beautiful overhead shot of the city of Moray under a clear blue sky. Turan is getting his money's worth of information as he prepares to move on. Turan stands at the edge of the city, looking out toward the horizon with a determined look. He's ready for the next stage of his journey. Turan thinks about how Maidan gave him a ton of information about the next city. He decides that it's about time he left for there to continue his training. He reflects on their time together at the pub, noting that Maidan really is a good person. It's a rare moment of Turan acknowledging a positive human connection. He compares Maidan to Kiorn, thinking that while he isn't as seasoned, he's purer and kinder. It's a touching assessment of his new friend. Suddenly, Turan's eyes snap wide open. He reacts with a shocked gasp, his face going totally serious in an instant. He catches a scent on the wind, and his expression turns grim. He mutters about the smell, sensing something familiar and terrifying. Turan takes off running at full speed, thinking to please let his hunch be wrong as he charges into the forest. He looks desperate to reach someone in time. He stops by a tree and sees massive claw marks ripped into the bark. It's a clear sign of a powerful monster attack nearby. Turan stands in the middle of a clearing, looking down at the ground with the look of pure horror. He's found what he was afraid of. We see the back of Turan's head as he stares at a body lying in a pool of blood. The narrator builds the suspense, asking who this person is. A close-up shows one of the members of Maidan's crew, dead and covered in blood. The narrator asks if he isn't from Maidan's group, confirming the worst. Turan is speechless, his face bathed in a dim, cold light as he processes the scene. The shock is clearly visible in his eyes. We see a close-up of the victim's dead, open eye, reflecting the final moments of terror. It's a brutal, unforgiving image of death. A hand lies near a few coins scattered in the blood. It's a tragic reminder of their financial struggle that ended in this wasteland. Turan stands over Maidan's bloody body, his heart sinking. He asks the silence what in the world happened. Man, this just went from a training arc to a murder mystery. Turan is standing over Maidan's bloody body, his heart sinking. He's looking at his fallen friend, muttering his name, and you can feel the pain in his voice. Maidan is barely clinging to life, his voice a faint rasp. He's struggling to get even a single syllable out as Turan kneels beside him, his eyes wide with a desperate look of shock. The poor guy is coughing up blood, managing to whisper one last word, rabbit. It's a chilling final message, leaving Turan completely baffled about what kind of monster could have done this. Turan repeats the word, a rabbit, completely stunned. He looks down at a close-up of a monstrous, blood-covered rabbit snout that's literally chewing on something with a sickening sound. The scale of the carnage is revealed as we see the bodies of Maidan's entire group scattered across the field. Turan stands there in pure shock as he realizes a monster has wiped out his new friends. The culprit reveals itself, a massive, terrifying white rabbit with glowing red eyes and long, sharp ears. It's covered in blood and has a feral look that says it's definitely not your average woodland creature. Turan is on high alert, his hand reaching for a weapon as the beast looms in front of him. The atmosphere is thick with tension, the silence only broken by the rustle of the leaves. Suddenly, the rabbit lunges. It's a blur of white fur and red eyes, moving with a speed that's absolutely terrifying. Turan barely has time to react as the beast streaks past him, thinking how fast it is. He's never seen a small monster move with this kind of explosive power before. The rabbit skids to a halt, kicking up a cloud of dust in the middle of the dark forest. It's looking back at Turan, readying itself for another high-speed charge. Turan doesn't hesitate, spinning his sling in a wide, powerful arc. He's aiming to end this fight quickly before the beast can get the drop on him again. He lets out a yell and launches his projectile, the sling whipping through the air with a powerful whoosh. He's putting every bit of his frustration into this one shot. The projectile flies through the forest, a glowing streak of energy that illuminates the trees. Turan is a master marksman, and this shot looks like a direct hit. But the rabbit is insanely nimble, leaping into the air and dodging the attack with a quick thud. It's mocking Turan's skills with its agility. The rabbit lands and immediately counterattacks, its eyes glowing with malice as it closes the distance. Turan lets out a surprised gasp as he realizes his favorite trick just got countered. The rabbit's claws strike Turan's mana shield with a loud crack, sending sparks flying everywhere. The sheer force of the impact is enough to make the ground beneath them crack. Turan grinds his teeth, analyzing the situation mid-fight. He realizes this monster is actually used to defending against thrown weapon techniques, which is a bad matchup for a shepherd. The monster rabbit is relentless, its heavy paws thudding into the dirt as it positions itself for another strike. It looks like it's actually enjoying the challenge of hunting a wizard. The rabbit lets out a terrifying roar, its silhouette looming large against the trees. It's an intimidating sight, showing that this isn't just a fast beast, it's a powerful one too. Close up on that glowing red eye. The rabbit is focused, its pupillary slit narrowing as it locks onto Turan for the killing blow. Wait, what? Turan disappears in a flash of wind, leaving the rabbit confused and looking around. He's using his own high-speed movement to turn the tables on the beast. The rabbit looks around frantically, its ears twitching as it tries to locate its prey. Turan is a blur of motion, circling the beast and looking for an opening. He draws a short blade with a quiet rasp, moving like a ghost through the shadows. He's finished playing around with the sling and is going for a more direct approach. Turin reappears right above the rabbit's head, his blade glowing with mana. The beast looks up in shock, realizing too late that it just got sniped from the air. The rabbit lets out a high-pitched scream as Turan's blade finds its mark. Blood sprays into the air, staining the white fur even further. Turan lands gracefully as the rabbit is sent tumbling through the air. It's a definitive blow, but you can tell he's still fuming about what this thing did to Medan. The impact is massive, a column of dust and debris erupting where the rabbit crashed. Turan stands silhouetted against the blast, looking totally cold-hearted. The ground literally shatters as Turan delivers a follow-up strike. He's not giving this monster a single second to recover. The rabbit is pinned down, its eyes wide with fear as Turan looms over it. It lets out a pained groan, realizing its reign of terror in the forest is officially over. We get a dramatic overhead shot as Turan prepares the finishing move. Mana is crackling around him, illuminating the carnage in the clearing. The final strike connects with a boom that shakes the entire forest. The power output is insane, showing Turan's true potential when he's actually angry. A wide shot of the dark, misty forest as the dust begins to settle. The battle is over, but the atmosphere remains heavy and somber. The monster rabbit lies dead and mangled on the ground, its red eyes finally extinguished. It's a messy end for a beast that caused so much grief. Turan stands over the corpse, looking exhausted and sad. He has blood on his face, but it's the emotional weight of his friend's death that's really showing. A close-up shows Turan's boot stepping onto the bloody ground with a soft squish. He's approaching Maidan's body, his mind probably racing with what-ifs. He stands over Maidan one last time, the moonlight hitting his back. The silence of the forest is deafening now that the fighting has stopped. Turan reaches out a hand, his face bathed in a gentle, warm light. He's preparing to do something for his friend, perhaps a final act of respect or a mana-based ritual. Mana begins to rise from the ground, swirling around Turan in brilliant green ribbons. He's performing a massive mana absorption, but it looks different this time. Turan's eyes snap wide open as the power hits his system. He notes that the amount of mana being absorbed is different and way more intense than anything he's ever felt before. He's completely overwhelmed, muttering that he can't believe this while his eye glows with raw magical energy. He's just leveled up in a massive way, but the cost was too high. One of the other members of Maidan's group is actually still alive. He looks up at Turan with wide, terrified eyes, gasping out that he's a wizard. Turan stands tall and confirms it with a simple, yeah. The survivor is stunned, asking why a wizard would be hiding their identity out here in the middle of nowhere. Turan has a heartbreaking moment as he looks at the bodies. He asks the survivor if any of the four of them have a family he can pass their belongings to, showing his genuine compassion. The survivor groans, no, tears and blood mixing on his face. He mutters about their boss, his heart breaking as he realizes they're all truly gone. Flashback time. Medan is smiling at Turan in the pub, telling him about a great city nearby called Orem that has a place called a library. He looks so full of life here, which makes the present even sadder. Turan is intrigued, asking about the library. Maidan laughs, saying it supposedly has thousands of books, which sounds like heaven to a kid who grew up on a mountain. Maidan teases him, saying that the moment he says books, Turan finally looks interested. Turan just smirks back with a defensive reply, showing their playful dynamic. Back to the pub conversation, Maidan gets serious and asks Turan how he plans on getting in. He looks a bit concerned for his new rookie friend. Maidan explains the catch. Apparently, only wizards are allowed in. Turan just says, I see with a thoughtful look, his secret already making him feel like an outsider. Flashback ends. Turan is standing alone in the clearing, muttering that he's decided. The survivor asks what he means, but Turan is already mentally moving on. Turan declares to the empty clearing that he's going to that great city Maidan mentioned, Orem. He's taking Maidan's dream and making it his own mission. We see 3 simple stone markers on the ground, a makeshift grave for Maidan and his crew. Turan has done what he could to give them a proper rest. He says Maidan's name quietly, looking down at the graves with a somber expression. He's lost a good friend, but he's carrying their memory with him. He stands at the edge of the clearing, wishing them happiness in the afterlife. It's a beautiful, lonely shot that marks the end of this tragic chapter. The scene transitions to a crowded city street under a bright sky. Turan is walking through the throng of people, looking like a total fish out of water in the big city. Turan is actually embarrassed, thinking to himself that he can't believe he was shocked by the small city of Moray. Compared to where he is now, Moray was just a village. We get a breathtaking overhead shot of the great city of Orem. It's a massive, sprawling metropolis with a grand castle, manicured gardens, and endless rows of houses. This is the big leagues. Turan is stunned by the sheer number of people trying to enter the city. He's stuck in a long line at a massive gate, looking up in awe at the monumental scale of the architecture. Guards in heavy armor are stationed at the entrance, scanning everyone who comes through. Turan wonders if they're screening for wanted criminals, feeling the city's strict security. Turan thinks to himself that as expected of a great city, it's got a more established system. He's impressed by the order and professionalism of the guards as he gets closer to the gate. Suddenly, a guard shouts for him to halt right in his face. He looks back with a confused sound, caught off guard by the sudden confrontation. The guard is extremely rude, pointing a finger and shouting that there's no entry. He looks totally disgusted by Turan's appearance, which is a bit harsh for a first impression. The guard insults him further, saying he's never seen clothes that filthy. He tells Turan to go over to the side and at least dust himself off before even trying to enter the city. Turan looks down at his clothes, which are definitely covered in travel dust and monster blood. He sighs, realizing that looking like a mountain shepherd isn't going to get him very far in a place this fancy. He eventually finds the place, a massive, ancient stone tower covered in vines. He thinks to himself that this must be the library Madan talked about, looking up at the incredible height of the structure. Turan is completely blown away, muttering that it's overwhelming. He notes that a building this massive must have been built with magic, which is a fair assumption for such an epic tower. He walks up to the grand, ornate doors and politely says, "Excuse me." Two guards stationed there look back with a skeptical sound, wondering what this scruffy traveler wants. Turan tells them he's trying to enter, but the guards immediately shut him down. They inform him that this is a library only wizards can enter, looking down their noses at him. Turan just looks at them and says he's a wizard. The guard's reaction is one of complete disbelief, unable to believe that this kid could be a high-level magic user. The guard gets aggressive, asking if Turan wants to die for impersonating a wizard. He's fuming, calling Turan a lunatic for even making such a claim. The guard sneers that there's no way someone like him is a wizard, getting right in Turan's face. He's about to experience a very painful reality check. Turan just stares back with a blank expression, then lets out a small sound. Suddenly, red mana begins to flare around him with a powerful whoosh. Flashback to Kiorn explaining that wizards can recognize each other. He says that by sensing mana, they can even tell if another person is stronger than them. Close up on Turan's eye, which is glowing with an intense, intimidating light. He's about to prove exactly how strong he's become since leaving the mountain. Boom. Turan unleashes a massive wave of red mana that absolutely dwarfs the guards. His hand is outstretched, and the raw power of his presence is literally crushing. The aggressive guard is sent flying back, gasping out in pain. He's trembling from head to toe, the sheer pressure of Turan's mana making him physically ill. The second guard rushes over, frantically asking if he's alright. The first guard is totally broken, stammering out that he's fine while avoiding eye contact with Turan. The guard looks up at Turan with a face full of pure, unadulterated terror. He thinks to himself that this man is at least noble class or higher, realizing he just insulted a literal demigod. The guard's attitude does a total 180 as he bows low and stammers out that he's Kenya, a knight of House Valtus. He asks Turan which house he's from, looking desperate to fix his mistake. Turan just looks at him and asks if he has to say to enter. Kenya is terrified, immediately responding with a frantic no, realizing he's in no position to demand anything. Kenya explains that to use the library, you actually need permission from the Master of Valtus. Turan just gives him a skeptical look and asks what he means, clearly not looking forward to more bureaucracy. Turan is led inside a grand hallway, muttering alright with a heavy sigh. He's clearly annoyed that his quest for knowledge is turning into a networking event. We get a close-up of Turan's frustrated eye as he thinks he thought this would be a simple process. He's realizing that the higher you go in society, the more complicated things get. The scene transitions to a fancy bathroom where a maid is busy preparing a bath. You can hear her working hard to make sure everything is perfect for their new guest. Turan is sitting in a massive, luxurious marble bathtub, looking totally out of place. He's being pampered by a team of maids who are scrubbing him clean with vigor. Turan is completely overwhelmed by all the attention, muttering a firm stop while holding up a hand. He's never had anyone do this much for him before. The maids immediately freeze, one of them stammering out a terrified, "Yes, sir." They're treating him like a prince, which is a massive change from being a filthy outsider at the gate. One of the maids explains that if they fail to properly attend to an esteemed guest, they'll be severely punished. Turan asks if it's a problem if he washes by himself, showing he's still a simple mountain guy at heart. The scene shifts to a wide shot of the grand mansion of House Valtes, surrounded by lush gardens. This place is even fancier than the library tower. The maid from earlier is blushing as she watches Turan, thinking how amazing he looks. She's clearly taken with his new, polished appearance. The maid lets out a small gasp as she accidentally drops something, completely lost in her thoughts. She's embarrassed to have been caught staring at the handsome guest. Turan is fully dressed now in a sharp white and gold uniform, looking like a literal prince. He puts on his gloves and asks her if there's something on his face, totally oblivious to his own charm. A close-up shows the impeccable tailoring of his new outfit. He thinks to himself that this city really does have some high standards for its esteemed guests. The maid bows low and begs for forgiveness, saying she momentarily lost herself because of his beauty. It's an awkward confession, but Turan takes it in stride. Turan tells her there's nothing to forgive with a small smile, but he quickly adds for her to please not speak to him so casually, realizing he needs to maintain his noble persona to get what he wants. We get a close-up on Turan's eye as he thinks, Wow, what's this? He's catching a glimpse of himself in a mirror, and even he is impressed by how much he's changed in just a few hours. He walks down a grand hallway, the sound of his polished boots echoing on the marble floor. He looks completely in his element now, which is pretty impressive for a former shepherd. He's met by a young girl with bright pink hair who calls him the guest who showed up looking like a beggar. She's got a mischievous smirk, clearly not impressed by his fancy new clothes. She continues her teasing, saying that after washing him up and dressing him, he finally looks like a prince. Her guardian behind her is embarrassed, muttering that she shouldn't say that. Turan introduces himself simply as Turan, while the girl says she's Azella. They're staring each other down, and you can tell she's going to be a handful. Azella asks what house he's from, but Turan just says that for personal reasons, it's difficult to say. He's keeping his secret identity close to his chest, even in front of a fellow noble. Azella lets out a disappointed sound, saying, "That's a shame. She's clearly used to getting whatever she wants and doesn't like being kept in the dark." She gives a menacing smirk, thinking that if he's hiding who he is, then maybe she'll play a little prank. This kid is definitely trouble. Suddenly, a massive surge of orange mana erupts from Azella, filling the entire room. She's way more powerful than she looks, and she's aiming that energy right at Turan. Azella is grinning widely as her mana swirls around her like a firestorm. She's testing Turan, wanting to see if his power is as real as his fancy clothes. The final panel shows Turan standing calmly amidst the raging mana, his eye glowing with his own power. He knows exactly what's happening. She's trying to sense his mana. Man, this simple library trip just turned into a noble showdown. Azella is absolutely flooding the room with her orange mana, trying to pressure Turan. He just stands there looking completely unbothered, like he's waiting for a bus instead of facing a magical storm. Suddenly, Turan's eye glows with a brilliant blue light as he activates his own power. He's not just taking the hit, he's actively neutralizing her energy with a massive burst of blue mana. The two magic sources collide, creating a spectacular display of clashing orange and blue energy circles. The sheer power output is insane, turning the hallway into a high-stakes arena. One of the maids nearby gets caught in the shockwave and screams in terror. The force of the mana clash is literally blowing people back, showing that these two aren't playing around. The energy begins to dissipate, leaving trails of light swirling around the ornate ceiling. It's a beautiful but dangerous reminder of the power these noble-level wizards possess. Turan lets out a calm breath as he settles his mana, closing his eyes for a moment. He looks totally relaxed, as if that massive display of power didn't take any effort at all. Azella is left speechless, her mouth slightly open as she mutters a stunned, "Wow." She clearly wasn't expecting a beggar to have that much raw power. She immediately bursts into laughter, looking absolutely delighted by the surprise. She claps her gloved hands together, finding Turan's hidden strength to be the most entertaining thing ever. She stops laughing and leans in, looking at Turan with a new kind of intensity. She starts to speak, her playful mood shifting into something a bit more predatory. Then she drops the ultimate bombshell. She asks if he wants to marry her. She's got a wild smirk on her face, and you can tell she's half joking and half deadly serious about securing that power. The two of them stand in the middle of a massive, glowing magic circle on the floor, surrounded by silence. It's an awkward standoff after a proposal that came out of nowhere. Turan is sweating bullets, staring at her with a look of pure shock. He's completely lost for words, probably wondering if every city girl is this crazy. Azella starts cracking up again, telling him to relax because it was just a joke. Her guardian looks on with a tired expression, clearly used to her eccentric behavior. Even so, she tells him to think about it once with a wink. She mentions the seat next to her is currently empty, basically telling him he's qualified for the position. She walks away with her guards trailing behind, leaving Turan standing alone in the grand hallway. The drama is over for now, but she's definitely left a lasting impression. Turan just stands there with a blank stare, not saying a word. He looks like he's trying to process the fact that he was just pranked with a marriage proposal by a high noble. We get a close-up of Turan's eye as he watches her leave. He's not just stunned, he's analyzing her, realizing just how dangerous she actually is. His hand is visibly trembling, a clear sign that he's feeling the after effects of that mana clash. He's realizing that the world outside the mountain is full of monsters in human form. Turan looks at his hand, noting that Azella has mana on par with his at the very least. He's questioning if this level of power is actually considered normal in the big city. The scene transitions to a different part of the mansion, showcasing a grand noble crest on the wall. It's a reminder that he's in the heart of House Valtis's territory. Turan is led into a massive office where a man is sitting behind a desk covered in papers. The scale of the room is intended to make anyone entering feel small and insignificant. The man, Lord Valtis, greets him warmly as a young noble. He assumes Turan already knows who he is, which is a classic powerful guy move. Turan introduces himself simply, and the Lord repeats his name with interest. He cuts to the chase, asking if Turan's goal is to use the city's legendary library. Lord Valtis gives him a quick reality check, telling him there's no amazing ancient magic or secret mana-boosting methods in the library. He's trying to manage Turan's expectations right out of the gate. Turan tells him he's fine with that, as he wasn't looking for cheat codes anyway. The Lord says he won't stop him, but reiterates that there's no confidential info hidden in the stacks. Since it's gotten late, the Lord suggests Turan rest up and come back tomorrow. Turan politely accepts, thanking him for the kindness as he looks out at the city skyline. We see an outside shot of the Sky Library at dusk, a massive stone tower covered in vines that looks like it reaches the clouds. It's an imposing sight that promises a lot of secrets. The next morning, Turan arrives at the entrance where two guards bow deeply to him. They confirm his entry pass and officially welcome the esteemed guest to the Sky Library. The heavy, ornate doors groan open with a loud creak. It's like Turan is stepping into a different world, one filled with the smell of old parchment and magic. Turan's eyes go wide as he steps inside, muttering a quiet, wow. He's completely awestruck by what he's seen for the first time. The interior is jaw-dropping, featuring endless spiral staircases and shelves that disappear into the darkness above. It's a literal mountain of knowledge, and Turan is right at the base. He looks down into a reading room with long wooden tables and rows of chairs. The place is perfectly silent, looking like a temple dedicated to learning. A voice calls out, greeting Turan by name. He looks over to see the librarian, who seems to have been waiting for him. The librarian is a young girl with long, jet-black hair and a white robe. She looks way too young for the job, which immediately makes Turan suspicious. She introduces herself and says she'll explain the rules by order of the Lord. She has a mischievous look on her face that makes her seem way older than she appears. Turan is confused, thinking that a little kid is the librarian. She starts listing the rules. Rule 1, if you break it, you pay for it. Rule 2, no stealing books. She gets right in Turan's personal space, telling him she'll be watching him the whole time. She's definitely got an eccentric personality to match the rest of the Volta's family. Turan asks if she's actually read all the books here, and she confidently claims that finding what people need is what she's best at. They stand in the vast, empty library, looking like tiny specks among the shelves. She asks him what he's looking for, romance, history. She's trying to profile him based on his age, which Turan clearly finds annoying. Then she asks if he wants something erotic, while Turan just stares at her with a deadpan expression. He's starting to think everyone in this city is a troll. Turan ignores the joke and tells her he just wants to learn basic common sense about the world. The librarian looks genuinely surprised by such a grounded request from a young noble. A close-up shows rows of thick, leather-bound books. These are exactly what Turan needs to finally understand the world he's been hiding from for 8 years. They get to work, with the librarian pulling a small mountain of books for him. She tells him this section should help with his common sense problem, and Turan gives a sincere thank you. Turan picks up the first book, looking at it with a mix of curiosity and reverence. He's finally holding the key to the world in his hands. He thinks to himself, so this is what a book is, staring at the runic text on the cover. For a guy from a mountain village, this is more magical than any fireball. He carefully opens the cover, the pages making a crisp rustling sound. He's about to dive into a sea of information that will change everything for him. We get a close-up of his focused face as he starts reading. You can practically see his brain absorbing the new information like a sponge. He breaks into a genuine smile, muttering that it's amazing. He's finally found the challenge he's been looking for, the challenge of understanding the world. The narrator tells us that Turan repeated this same routine every single day, reading in the library. He's shown sitting alone at a massive table, surrounded by his new friends. He begins to understand the world's geography and its different races, seeing visions of distant lands and strange creatures. His horizons are expanding way beyond the peaks of his home mountain. He learns about wizard etiquette and how various magical items are manufactured. We see a vision of a mermaid-like creature, showing the depth of the lore he's uncovering. He even reads about ancient monsters and relics from the era of the Old Empire. The library is providing him with the history and context he never had as a simple shepherd. With every piece of knowledge he accumulates, his world grows. He looks completely absorbed in a book, his expression one of calm, focused determination. Lord Valtus is shown back in his office, noting that Turan has been making excellent use of the library. He's impressed by the kid's dedication to actual study instead of just seeking power. The Lord mentions that allowing Turan to use the library was an act of goodwill, but he trusts Turan understands that this is separate from treating him as a noble. He's making the political boundaries very clear. Turan doesn't miss a beat, telling the Lord he'd like to receive payment for that goodwill. He's basically asking for a quest to settle the debt, and the Lord seems ready to give him one. Lord Valtus explains a serious monster problem. 4 knights went to subjugate a beast and never returned. They were eaten. He shows a map of the area, making the danger very clear. The Lord massages his temples, admitting they can only mobilize 2 people right now. He's clearly understaffed and looking for high-level help, even if it's from a guest. Turan agrees with a simple, very well. He's ready to put his new knowledge and increased mana to the test against a real threat. As Turan walks away, he thinks to himself that something feels off. He knows that wizards usually don't get involved in these kinds of things, so why is the Lord asking him personally? The Lord had explained that a northern road is blocked, an important trade route for Orem. It's been closed for 10 days, and they need it opened quickly to keep the economy moving. Turon realizes that the road was blocked even before he arrived in the city. He starts to suspect that he's being used for a very specific reason, which explains why the Lord was so helpful with the library access. We see a close-up of armored boots walking across the pavement. The mission is officially starting, and the mood is getting a lot more serious. A wide shot of the city's gate shows it reinforced with massive spikes and fortifications. This monster in the north is clearly a bigger threat than anyone is letting on. Turan meets up with Azella and a black-haired knight named Marvin in the courtyard. They look like an elite strike team, ready to head out into the danger zone. Azella adjusts her gloves, looking up at the sky. She mutters that her father really is something else, probably annoyed that she's being sent on a mission with the Beggar Prince. Marvin asks if the knights who failed were really that unreliable. He's clearly confident in his own skills, but Azella's presence suggests they aren't taking any chances this time. Azella clarifies that she's not blaming the knights, just that her father is making a huge fuss. She thinks the mission is a bit of an overkill, despite the casualty report. Marvin laughs and calls her young miss, telling her to drop it. He seems to be the calm, rational member of the group, acting as a buffer between the two siblings. Suddenly, both Marvin and Azella stop and look at Turan with a surprised gasp. Something has caught their attention, and the tension between them is rising again. Marvin introduces himself properly as Marvin Valtis and says he looks forward to working with Turan. Turan responds with a polite likewise, keeping his professional mask on. A boot thuds into the dirt as they step onto the forest path. The city is behind them now, and it's time to face whatever is lurking on that northern trade route. Azella leads the way, saying they should finish this quickly and go back to rest. She's acting bored, but you can tell she's on high alert as they enter the woods. Marvin leans in and asks Turan if he's interested in his big sis by any chance. Turan gives him a deadpan no without even hesitating. Marvin lets out a big smile and says that's a relief. He clearly doesn't want another noble suitor sniffing around his sister, especially one as powerful as Turan. Suddenly, someone in the distance screams for them to stop and the whole group freezes. The mission just went from a stroll to a combat encounter in a split second. The group stands in a clearing, looking at a scene of total destruction. A wagon has been smashed to pieces, and debris is scattered everywhere. Kenya looks at a broken carriage wheel and asks if that's the creature. It looks like the monster they're hunting has already left its mark on some unfortunate travelers. Turan is silent, observing the wreck with his sharp eyes. He's not looking at the big pieces, he's looking for the small clues the others might have missed. He finds a massive, charred handprint on a wooden plank. This wasn't just a beast, it was something that uses heat or fire in its attacks. Turan looks at the wreck and concludes that it's a monkey. He's managed to identify the culprit just from the handprint and the style of the damage. Azella is skeptical, asking if it's a monkey while a chibi version of her looks confused in the background. Turan just points at the handprint, telling her to see for herself. He notes that it likely attacked the peddlers and then went back into the forest. He's already planning the pursuit while the others are still processing the identification. Azella admits she can barely use that kind of magic, referring to tracking. Marvin agrees, saying he can't do it either, which leaves the heavy lifting to Turan. Turan steps forward and says he'll try looking. He's taking charge of the situation, showing that he's more than just a library worm. He closes his eyes and focuses, while Azella asks if he's from that bloodline. She's starting to suspect that his powers are even rarer than she thought. Turan activates a search spell, and a massive magic circle glows in his mind's eye. He's using a high-level detection technique that most knights could only dream of. We get a close-up of his intense, focused eye. He's not just looking for tracks, he's scanning for mana signatures in the dense forest. Faint blue wisps of magic start to lead the way into the woods. Turan has found the trail, and the hunt is officially on. He points deep into the trees and says, "This way." The group follows him, trusting his magical senses as they move deeper into the monster's territory. They reach a river, and Turan stops, noting that the trail stops here. He observes that it looks like it washed its body, which is a terrifyingly intelligent move for a beast. Azella is stunned, asking if a mere beast would really do that specifically to avoid being tracked. She's starting to realize they aren't dealing with a typical animal. She starts to walk away, suggesting maybe it just washed because it wanted to, trying to downplay the monster's intelligence. Turan remains silent, his intuition telling him something is wrong. Suddenly, Turan's face goes totally sharp as he senses a movement in the trees. Scent trails and mana ripples are flaring up all around him. He screams for them to look behind them as Marvin and Azella look back in shock. They've been lured into an ambush, and the predator is finally ready to strike. A giant black monkey creature with glowing yellow eyes and massive teeth erupts from the trees, screaming with rage. It's huge and absolutely terrifying, looking like a nightmare from the old empire. The monster lunges from the high branches with incredible speed. It's moving way faster than a creature of its size should be able to, catching the group completely off guard. One of the knights screams to dodge as he sees the beast coming right at them. He's got a look of pure panic, realizing they've lost the initiative. Boom. The monster smashes into the group with a massive explosion of dust and force. Knights are sent flying in all directions as the beast unleashes a chaotic opening attack. Azella manages to leap back with lightning speed. her white cape fluttering as she avoids the direct impact. She's quick, but the monster is already repositioning for its next kill. Turan stands his ground, watching the beast's movements with a cold, calculated gaze. He's not panicking, he's looking for the specific weakness he read about in the library. We see a wounded knight with blood streaming down his face, gritting his teeth in pain. The monster's first strike was brutal, and the team is already taking heavy damage. The massive shadow of the monster looms over another victim, its yellow eyes pulsing with a malicious light. This isn't just a hunt for the beast, it's a fight for survival. Azella counterattacks with a powerful kick, her leg blurring as it strikes the monster. She's managed to draw its attention away from the wounded knights, showing her true noble spirit. Turan thinks to himself that his mother wasn't wrong, likely recalling her warnings about the dangers of the world. He's seen the grim reality of wizard life firsthand now. Azella screams for the remaining knights to attack, trying to regain control of the battlefield. She's a natural leader, but the monster is proving to be a difficult target. Suddenly, the black beast turns and takes off running into the deep forest. It's not retreating out of fear, it's leading them into a more favorable environment for an ambush. The monster screams as it bounds away through the undergrowth. Azella yells for the group to chase it, refusing to let the creature escape after it caused so much damage. The beast is shown swinging through the high branches with effortless ease, making a whipping sound. It's perfectly at home in the forest canopy, leaving the grounded humans in the dust. The team struggles to keep up, with Marvin shouting that it's too fast. They're losing sight of the monster as it disappears into the dark canopy. This chase is just starting. Marvin is absolutely losing his mind as the group chases a blur through the forest, screaming that the thing is way too fast to catch. They're running full tilt, but it's clear this monster has the home field advantage in the trees. We get a frantic close-up of Azella's eye as she realizes the situation is spiraling. She's sweating bullets, thinking they're about to lose their target for good. Suddenly, a blue streak of energy zips right past Azella, catching her completely off guard. She lets out a shocked gasp as someone else decides to step into the fight. Check out this epic overhead shot. The whole group is running right through a massive pillar of blue light that just erupted in the middle of the woods. The monster monkey doesn't even know what hit it, screaming in pain as a blue energy blast slams into it mid-air. It's being taken down by a force it never saw coming. Marvin and Azella slide to a halt, looking back in total disbelief. They were struggling just to keep pace, and now someone just sniped their target out of the sky. Turan slowly emerges from the shadows, looking like a total boss with a glowing blue mana ring floating behind his hand. He's walking calmly while the forest air swirls around him like he owns the place. We get a close-up of Turan's face, and he is the definition of unbothered. He looks like he's just taking a light stroll instead of ending a high-speed monster chase. The monster lets out one final scream as it crashes into a massive, dark crater. Marvin and Azella are just standing there, trying to process the absolute gap in power they just witnessed. Azella isn't about to be upstaged, though, and she yells for it to die with pure venom in her voice. She lunges forward, her hands already glowing with a dangerous orange light. Check out that fiery mana. She's concentrating all her power into her palm, preparing to unleash something that's definitely going to leave a mark. She lets loose a massive, spiraling dragon of pure flame that roars through the clearing. This isn't just a simple spell. She's actively cremating that monster where it stands. Kaboom! A giant explosion of fire completely engulfs the crater, lighting up the entire forest in a blinding orange glow. Azella definitely made sure that thing stayed dead. Turan watches the inferno with a neutral expression, analyzing her technique. He realizes he's seeing the legendary bloodline ability of the Voltus family, a bunch of literal pyromaniacs. The dust starts to settle, and Marvin lets out a relieved breath, saying, "It's over." The other knights stand around, looking battered but alive. That was way closer than it should have been. Azella looks back at Turan, her expression softened by a mix of shock and respect. She admits that even she got chills when she saw that rock he threw coming toward them. Marvin tries to tease her, asking if she was actually scared, but she immediately snaps back at him to shut up. She claims he was the one screaming like a little girl, which is classic sibling bickering. The mood shifts as we see the knights tending to their wounded on the ground. One guy is groaning while his friend frantically looks for bandages, reminding everyone that monster hunting is no joke. Turan looks over the carnage and mutters, "What a mess." He thinks they're incredibly lucky. There were 0 casualties, given how badly the knights were outclassed. We see a grim flashback, or an imagined scene of the knights being torn apart. It's a stark reminder that this fight could have easily ended with everyone coming home in a box. Turan has a tiny, almost imperceptible smirk on his face. He's clearly thinking about how much stronger he's become since he first picked up a sling. He watches the knights bicker, noting that while they should be several times tougher than commoners, they didn't hesitate to use weaker people as shields earlier. He's learning that the noble code is often just a suggestion. Marvin notices him staring and asks what it is with a confused look. He's starting to realize that Turan isn't just some random guest traveler. Turan just looks away and tells him it's nothing, keeping his observations to himself. He knows it's better to stay quiet while he's still learning the lay of the land. Azella breaks the tension, welcoming him to join them for the mana harvest. She shouts for him to come absorb mana, sounding way more friendly than before. The group stands in a circle around the massive, scorched shadow of the monkey monster. It's a high-angle shot that shows just how large the beast actually was compared to them. Turon reaches out his hand, and green mana wisps immediately begin to swirl toward him. He's closing his eyes, focusing on pulling every drop of energy from the remains. You can see the intensity on Turon's face as he absorbs the power. He's thinking about how the degree of enhancement doesn't seem to drop even when multiple people are sharing the mana. Azella and Marvin eventually have to stop, huffing for breath. Marvin mutters about his crappy growth limit, looking annoyed that he can't hold any more energy. Azella is stunned, watching Turan continue to absorb the green light. She thinks to herself that she finally understands why her father sent him along. His mana capacity literally rivals hers. Turan is still at it, his silhouette glowing with a vibrant green aura. He looks like a bottomless pit for energy, showing a power level that's frankly terrifying to the other knights. The scene transitions to a beautiful wide shot of Orm at sunset. The mission is done, and the city looks peaceful from a distance as the sky turns a warm orange. Back at the inn, Marvin smiles and admits they never would have won without Turan's help. He gives the kid full credit for the tracking and the hit that finally knocked the beast down. Turan just waves it off with a humble expression, saying it wasn't anything spectacular. He's a pro at playing the modest warrior role. Azella asks about the monster's specific abilities, and Turan confirms it had a high-level search skill. He's already teaching them things they should have known as professional hunters. Turan explains that monsters often awaken different abilities based on their external traits. He's talking like a professor, and you can see Marvin and Azella are hanging on every word. He points out that the monkey had huge hands and eyes, which probably meant it had the ability to throw things with insane force and see through the forest. It's a logical breakdown that blows the knights' minds. Marvin is absolutely floored, saying he can't believe Turan figured all that out in such a short time. He looks at Turan with a mix of awe and a little bit of suspicion. Marvin scoffs when Turan mentions the library, calling it a stuffy place where nobody goes. He admits he went once because he was curious, but left because the books were too hard. Turan cracks a little joke, telling Marvin he should ask the librarian for some easy books next time he has the chance. Marvin just laughs, not realizing the librarian isn't exactly a normal person. Azella is surprised, asking about the librarian like she didn't even know someone managed the place. Marvin confirms that, yeah, there's a person who runs the show there. Turan thinks back to his time in the stacks, wondering if there was even someone like that in the library. He's realizing that his encounter with the ghost girl was way more unique than he thought. We get a beautiful exterior shot of the library tower as the last rays of the sun hit the stone. It's a peaceful, quiet place that's hiding some major magical secrets. Turan returns to the library and finds the ghostly librarian floating upside down as usual. She looks like a mischievous kid, and Turan just stares at her with a deadpan expression. He reflects on his own carelessness, realizing that in this city, no one would ever call a noble by their first name. He's trying to stay undercover, but he's realizing he has a lot to learn about high society rules. He watches the librarian float around, thinking to himself that her behavior definitely doesn't scream official librarian. She's too playful and weird for such a serious job. Turan finally asks her the big question. How does she know his name? He's standing in the dark stacks, casting a long shadow as he confronts the mysterious girl. The girl lets out a surprise sound and covers her mouth, clearly caught in a slip-up. She looks like she accidentally gave away a secret she was supposed to keep. A close-up shows her mouth curling into a mischievous smirk. She's not actually worried. She's enjoying the fact that Turan is finally paying attention to her. She sits cross-legged right on a reading table, asking if he only noticed now with a teasing look. She seems to find Turan's late realization absolutely hilarious. She explains she simply learned it from his library permit, which is a boringly logical answer. Turan stands there, probably feeling a bit dumb for expecting some grand conspiracy. She waves her arms dramatically, and a book floats right into her hand. She claims that as long as it's within these walls, her gaze reaches absolutely everywhere. Turan sighs and asks how he should address her then. He's surrounded by floating shelves and glowing mana, trying to maintain some level of professional decorum with a ghost. She says she doesn't actually have a name, so he can call her whatever he wants. She's floating near his face, looking like she's having the time of her life messing with him. Turan suggests calling her librarian, but she immediately shoots back with a playful suggestion to call her something cute, like my love. He looks at her with a completely flat no expression. She leans in way too close, teasing him that it's awkward when he suddenly gets so formal. They're staring right at each other, and the height difference makes the whole scene feel even weirder. Turan tells her to back off because she's being burdensome. She just giggles and floats away, clearly not caring about personal space or his comfort levels. Turan asks if she's some kind of ancient wizard from the old empire. She says no, she wasn't even a human person to begin with, which is a pretty big reveal. We get an overhead shot as she explains her true nature. She's a spirit that inhabits the building, stating matter-of-factly that, in other words, the library itself is her. She floats upside down above him, saying her current human form is just for comfortable communication. She teases him that his own preferences in women are kind of weird if this is the form she manifested as. Turan isn't buying it, telling her not to make stuff up. She claims it's the truth though, comparing her form to a mere reflection in water. Turan is silent for a moment, just looking at her with a thoughtful expression. He's trying to wrap his head around the idea of a sentient building having a sassy ghost avatar. Suddenly, Turan reaches out and places his hand right on her torso with a loud thud. He's literally testing if she's solid or just a hologram. The girl looks down at his hand and asks where he's touching, saying it feels weird. She's blushing a little, caught completely off guard by his directness. She apologizes, complaining about how annoying it is that she can't directly exert power in the physical world. Turan just stands there with a blank stare while she grumbles. She says if she could, she would have punished every bastard who ever treated a book carelessly. She looks genuinely angry about library etiquette, which is on brand for a sentient library. Turan asks if she means everyone who's ever used the place, and she gives him a knowing look. He's starting to realize just how much she's seen over the centuries. She floats in the air surrounded by glowing rings of mana and orbiting books. She explains that until now, no one had the right qualifications to actually perceive her. She says her creator designed her so only those with a complete type beyond a certain level could see her. She leans over him, whispering that it's pretty romantic that they're the only ones who can see each other. Turan asks what she means by type, and she explains that it's what wizards commonly call a bloodline. Turan looks shocked, finally connecting his power to his family history. Turan stands in the middle of the dark room, asking if she can tell him about his own bloodline. She tells him he should just ask his parents, but his expression goes dark as he admits he's an orphan. The spirit girl offers to check for him, looking a bit more serious now. She says all she needs is his consent to examine his body, which is a line that would sound way more suspicious coming from anyone else. Turan has a massive sweat drop as he repeats the phrase, examine his body. He looks totally nervous while she just looms over him with a creepy, mischievous grin. She giggles while Turan wonders if this is really how the procedure is done. He looks like a guy who's about to experience a very invasive medical checkup. Suddenly, a massive beam of purple light pierces right through Turan's chest with a powerful whoosh. It looks extremely painful, and Turan has a look of absolute horror on his face. She tells him to relax because it doesn't actually hurt, chirping that they're connected now like it's a fun game. Turan just looks at her with an annoyed expression, clearly not enjoying the connection. She analyzes his mana, noting that large chunks of it come from the Pursuer and Hunter bloodlines. She asks if that's a trait of House Sahar, which Turan confirms with a nod. We get a close-up of her eye as she spots something else hidden deep in his power. She mutters that there's something else, her expression turning into one of pure intrigue. Turan is confused, asking what's mixed. She confirms with a huge gasp that it was mixed, looking like she just found a rare diamond at a pile of rocks. She explains that it means he's the offspring of two people from completely different noble bloodlines. He asks about the other one, but she says she can't see it because it's locked. Turan looks down at the floor, muttering, I see, while the news sinks in. He's just discovered that his heritage is way more complicated and potentially powerful than he ever imagined. We get a close-up of his somber face as he thinks about his mother. He's realizing that his mother's secrets were likely meant to protect him from a very dangerous destiny. He thinks about how she was educated to live as a commoner, despite her noble blood. He realizes her mana was likely too diluted to hold high-level power, which is why she chose a peaceful life on the mountain. Turan thanks the spirit for her help, and she immediately goes back to being playful. She begs him to stay one more month, floating around him like an annoying younger sister. Time skips forward, and we see Turan back at the reading tables, buried in research. He's asking the spirit about invisible substances, showing he's moved on to the technical side of magic. She teaches him a cool trick, showing him how to shape water in the air to act as a microscope lens. Turan looks through it, amazed that he can now see things invisible to the naked eye. Turan is genuinely grateful, thinking that having the laws of nature explained in plain words is a treasure beyond measure. He's finally getting the education he was always denied. We see a close-up of microorganisms swirling around inside the water lens. This is high-level biology being taught as basic common sense by a library spirit. He learns that the decay of living things is caused by the feeding of tiny germs. It's a huge revelation for a guy who used to think rot was just a natural curse or something. He doesn't stop there, grasping other basic physics principles like light refraction and heat generation. We see a montage of him experimenting with a stick and some fire, showing his rapid progress. Turan decides to put his new knowledge to the test, starting with an experiment on decay. He's holding a small red fruit, looking like a scientist on the verge of a breakthrough. He places a single finger on the surface of a pristine red apple. He's not using raw force. He's trying to apply the causality of decay that he just learned about. Poof! The apple instantly turns black and shrivels up into a rotting mess with a withering sound. He's literally decomposed it in a split second using just his mana and scientific understanding. The spirit librarian asks how it is with a proud look, and Turan responds with a stunned incredible. He's realized that knowledge is a far more efficient weapon than raw mana. The narrator explains that simply changing his perception of the world raised his skill as a wizard in a massive way. He's looking at his hand, realizing the true scale of his potential. Turan sits at the table, thinking about how powerful houses must be monopolizing knowledge like this to keep their dominance. He realizes that if every wizard knew this stuff, no one would have a competitive edge. The spirit librarian looks at him and says she finally kind of understands why he was chosen. Turan has a serious look, his resolve finally fully formed after all this study. We see an outside shot of the sky library as the sun sets. The text bubble tells us Turan has decided it's about time he should leave. His time as a student is officially over. Inside, the librarian asks him if he's leaving, and he confirms that the owner has been dropping some pretty obvious hints to get him moving. He's ready for the next phase of his journey. Suddenly, the spirit girl loses her cool and screams for him not to go and to take her with him. She's flying toward him with a look of pure, desperate clinginess. She actually falls to the floor and grabs his leg with a grunt. Turan looks down at her with a confused expression, probably not expecting such an emotional farewell from a building spirit. He asks if she can even leave this place, and she admits with a pouted face that no. She then tries a different tactic, asking him to just stay here so she can keep taking care of him. She lets out an annoyed huff when he refuses, floating around him as he prepares his gear. She acts like she doesn't care that he's leaving, but you can tell she's going to be lonely. She tells him to go explore the god's legacy scattered across the land. She mentions that maybe he'll find another spirit out there who knows even more than she does. Turan walks toward the massive library doors, promising he'll come visit from time to time. The girl is surrounded by floating books, looking smaller than usual in the vast room. She tells him to come if he wants, or don't, turning her back to him. She's doing the classic, "I didn't even like you anyway" move as he departs. Turan looks back over his shoulder with a genuine, gentle smile. He's appreciated her company and her teachings more than he lets on. We get a finny shot of the massive library tower reaching toward the bright blue sky. Turan is leaving the city of Aurum behind, a far more powerful and enlightened man than when he arrived. Turan is walking away from the city gates, his backpack full and his resolution set. He looks like a proper adventurer now, ready to face whatever the world throws at him. He consults a continental map he swiped from the library, which shows the different noble territories. He notes that House Zahar's base, the Enril Desert, is east of Aurum. He declares to himself that he'll head to Zahar, looking out over the winding mountain path. He's finally heading toward the source of his bloodline to find the truth about his past. The final panel shows Turan looking up at the sky with determination. He's determined to find clues about his parents and finally understand the legacy he's carrying. The real journey starts now. Turan is officially clocking out of the city of Aurum. People are staring as he walks away, probably wondering why this guy is heading back into the wilderness. He's got his massive backpack strapped on tight. The narrator lets us know that House Zahar's base is in the Enril Desert, way off to the east. Turan has that look of quiet determination on his face. He knows exactly where he's going, and Zahar is the destination. He's not just traveling for the fun of it. He's on a mission to dig up some long-lost secrets. It's all about finding clues that might lead him back to his parents. The sun is setting, casting a golden glow over the path as he enters the woods. He tells himself there's no rush, keeping a steady pace as the shadows get longer. By nightfall, he's got a cozy campfire going by the riverbank. He's taking a moment to rest and cook some food before the real journey begins. Deep in the dark forest, Turan is walking past a pile of monster bones. He figures that if clues were meant to vanish, they would have been gone long ago during these last 18 years. Suddenly, something catches his attention, and he stops dead in his tracks. He lets out a surprised sound as a strange noise echoes through the trees. It's a horse neighing loudly nearby, but something about it sounds way too frantic. This isn't just a happy animal out for a stroll. Turan ducks down into the tall grass, peeking out to see what's going on. He's in full stealth mode, making sure he doesn't walk straight into an ambush. He spots a majestic red horse standing alone in a clearing. The poor thing looks on edge, huffing and stomping its hooves like it's expecting a fight. Turan notices the horse is wearing a full saddle. He realizes it wasn't some monster's lunch, but it actually seems like the beast is protecting someone. He sees two figures standing over a dead creature in the distance. He wonders how a mere beast could have been strong enough to take down whatever is lying on the ground. Turan's eyes widen as he gets a closer look at the scene. He's definitely seen enough monsters to recognize when something is seriously wrong. There they are, dark elves. One of them is shouting for the other to find an opening, looking totally feral and dangerous. A hand glows with an eerie purple mana, crackling with dark energy. These guys aren't just your average thugs, they've got some serious magical firepower. A dead monster lies on the ground, its body completely torn apart. The dark elves clearly made short work of it, and they didn't leave much behind. The two dark elves stand triumphantly over their kill, while the horse watches from the background. The atmosphere is thick with blood and dark magic. Turan is still crouched in the bushes, weighing his options. He wonders if he should jump in or just keep his head down and mind his own business. We get another intense close-up of his eye. He's analyzing every move those dark elves make, looking for a weakness. Talk about gross. One of the dark elves is literally biting into raw meat from the kill. Blood is dripping from their chin, and they look like they're enjoying every second of it. They're bickering over who gets which piece of the hairy meat. One is offering a severed hand to the other, which is just all kinds of wrong. Turan has seen enough, realizing with a grimace that they really are cannibals. He knows he can't just let people like this wander around. He activates his concealment spell, his hand glowing as he prepares to make his move. He's going ghost mode to get the jump on them. The dark elves sense something is off, looking around with confused and suspicious expressions. They know someone, or something, just vanished right in front of them. Bam! A massive explosion of blue mana slams into the ground right between them. Turan isn't playing around anymore, and he just announced his presence in a big way. One of the dark elves is fuming, covered in blood spatter, and looking ready to kill. They've been interrupted during dinner, and they are not happy about it. The shadowy forest path feels way more ominous now that the fight has started. You can practically feel the tension radiating from the trees. We get a chilling close-up of a dark elf's glowing yellow eye. These guys are predators through and through, and they've locked onto their new target. Out of nowhere, a massive bull monster charges into the fray. Things just got a whole lot more chaotic for everyone involved. Something is flying through the air at high speed, leaving a blue streak behind it. Turan's throwing skills are no joke, and he's aiming for a direct hit. The projectile hits its mark with a sharp thud, slamming into the dark elf with enough force to knock them off balance. Turan's aim is as sharp as ever. One dark elf is left holding a severed limb, looking completely unbothered by the carnage. These guys are built different, and creepy is an understatement. A massive tree comes crashing down, nearly crushing the dark elves. Turan is using the environment to his advantage, making it impossible for them to get a clear shot. One of them shouts in shock, realizing they're facing concealment magic. They finally know they're up against a real wizard who knows how to hide his tracks. A monster wolf with glowing red eyes emerges from the shadows, growling and ready to pounce. The dark elves brought some friends to the party. Suddenly, a massive pillar of golden mana erupts from the ground. Turan is powering up, and the sheer intensity of it is blowing the leaves right off the trees. Turan has that confident, dangerous smirk on his face. He's fully in his element now, and he knows these guys are in for a bad time. He leaps down from a high ledge, surprising a smaller beast as he descends. He's moving with the grace of a pro, making the whole mountain shepherd thing look like a cover story. Turan is standing in the eye of a literal windstorm, mana swirling around him like a protective barrier. He looks like a god of the forest. The dark elf girl on the monster mount is losing it, screaming for her beast to kill him at the top of her lungs. She's desperate to end this before he can finish his next spell. Turan calmly brings his palms together, focusing all that swirling mana into a single point. You know whatever is coming next is going to be explosive. Fire erupts from his hands in a massive spiral. He's gone from wind magic to pure pyromancy in a split second. He unleashes a literal wall of flame that incinerates everything in its path. The forest is glowing bright orange as he turns the clearing into an oven. One of the monsters is shown getting blasted back by the heat, its body turning to ash. Turan's firepower is on a completely different level than anything they've faced. Turan is shown diving through the smoke and fire, looking like a total action hero. He's not just standing still, he's taking the fight to them. He thinks to himself that killing one of them earlier was a smart move. He's cold and calculated, managing his resources while thinning out the herd. He grunts in pain, his eyes widening in shock. Something just caught him off guard, and for the first time, he looks actually worried. A wolf-like monster lunges out of the smoke and sinks its teeth into Turan's arm. Blood sprays out as the beast clamps down hard. Turan doesn't even flinch, just delivers a brutal kick that sends the monster flying with a loud thwack. He's not going down that easily. He takes a second to catch his breath, his expression turning even more serious. He's realized this fight is going to be more than just a warm-up. Another dark elf is standing right in front of him, glowing with an intense green aura. This one looks like the real boss of the group. The dark elf lunges forward with a punch that carries enough power to shatter stone. Turan is forced to dodge or take a massive hit. Turan gets clipped right in the face, and the force is enough to make his head snap back. Blood sprays into the air that's definitely going to leave a mark. He's on the ground, coughing up blood while the dark elf and his monster pets loom over him. This is looking pretty dire for our hero. The dark elf is having a good laugh, telling Turan that he'll be begging for a quick death by the time they're done. Total villain monologue vibes. Suddenly, the red horse comes charging in and delivers a massive kick right to the dark elf's face. That is some serious horsepower. The horse doesn't stop, practically stomping the dark elf into the dirt. The guy is screaming for help while being pulverized by a four-legged tank. A bull monster and a wolf try to close in, but they're clearly hesitant now that the horse has joined the fight. It's a literal Animal Kingdom showdown. With a solid thud, The horse kicks the wolf monster away like it's a soccer ball. Tilly is definitely the MVP of this encounter. The dark elf manages to get back up, looking absolutely humiliated and fuming. He's promising to kill everyone, looking like he's lost his mind from the beating. Out of nowhere, a beam of pure blue energy pierces right through the dark elf's chest. Turin just delivered a long-distance execution. The dark elf lies dead on the ground, his eyes glassy. Turin is standing in the distance, surrounded by swirling wind as the battle finally ends. We see a close-up of a massive blood puddle on the forest floor. It's a grim reminder of how brutal this fight actually was. Tilly, the red horse, stands majestically in the middle of the carnage. She looks like a total champion after saving Turan's life. Turan looks absolutely exhausted, blood smeared across his face. He's managing a small smile, likely relieved that it's finally over. He collapses to his knees, his strength finally giving out. That fight took everything he had, and then some. He's breathing hard, genuinely thinking to himself that he's really going to die. The adrenaline is wearing off, and the pain is setting in. Tilly leans her head down, checking on the man who just fought for her. It's a touching moment between the warrior and the beast. Turan looks up at the horse in surprise, managing a weak smile. He's starting to realize that Tilly isn't just a horse, she's a real friend. A blonde man is sitting next to Turan, thanking him for the rescue. He looks battered but relieved to be alive. The blonde man opens his eyes, looking up at the sky as he slowly wakes up. He's clearly been out for a while. The moon is bright and clear over the forest, casting a peaceful light over the campsite. Everything feels a lot quieter now. He sits up by the campfire, looking totally dazed and confused. He's trying to figure out where he is and how he survived. Turan is sitting across from him, perfectly calm and meditative. He looks like a seasoned traveler who's used to spending nights in the wild. The man watches the fire, still processing the shock. Turan is just a silhouette against the flames, looking totally cool. Turan finally speaks, simply saying he's awake while he works on some food. He's acting like they didn't just survive a dark elf death squad. The man looks at Turan with wide, grateful eyes. He's realizing that this stranger is the one who saved his life from certain death. Tilly nudges the blonde man with her head, checking on her owner. It's a sweet reunion for the two of them. He gives Tilly a big hug, whispering her name. It's clear they have a very deep bond, more like family than just owner and pet. Turan watches them with a soft expression, noting that Tilly is quite smart. He's impressed by how the horse knew exactly how to protect her owner and find safety. The man introduces himself as Aziz of the Burke family. Turan responds with his own name, and they officially start their new partnership over the campfire. Turan asks if there was a specific reason the Dark Elves attacked them. He's trying to figure out if this was a random raid or a targeted hit. Aziz says there was none, explaining they were just traveling with their servants when they were ambushed for no reason. It's a scary thought that these attacks can just happen. He mentions that he'd heard other races were violent, but he never expected it to be this bad. The trauma of the attack is clearly still fresh. Aziz starts to tear up, admitting he didn't imagine the world would be this brutal. He's seen the dark side of reality for the first time. He's sobbing now, muttering in frustration under his breath. He's grieving for everyone he lost in that forest. He holds his head in his hands, apologizing for losing people who were very precious to him. It's a heavy burden to carry. Turan asks if they were his family. Aziz clarifies they were his knights and servants, but to him, the bond was just as strong. Turan watches him with a thoughtful look. He thinks to himself that Aziz is truly a good person, likely because he cares so much about those who served him. Aziz says that everyone he was traveling with is likely gone now. It's a lonely reality he's facing after being part of the group. Turan simply tells him to explore. He's offering Aziz a new way to look at his situation, encouraging him to move forward despite the loss. The shadowy trees around them seem to pulse with dark energy. The danger in this forest is still very real, even if the camp feels safe. We get an intense close-up of Turan's eye as he watches the fire. He's reflecting on his own journey and the path that lies ahead. Aziz asks Turan if he has any urgent business right now. Turan explains that he's also on a journey, keeping his true goals a secret for now. Aziz is intrigued, asking if Turan is from a great family since he's traveling all alone. He's trying to figure out what kind of background a powerful wizard like him has. Turan plays it humble, claiming he's not actually that strong. He's always downplaying his abilities, probably to keep his cover. He explains that he only won because he ambushed one and struggled against the other, only succeeding because of Tilly's help. Aziz isn't buying the weak act for a second. Aziz is shown surrounded by a brilliant blue aura. He's way more powerful than he looks, and you can see the mana radiating off him. His face is bathed in a bright orange light as the campfire crackles. He's got that determined hero look now that he's starting to recover. The two wizards sit by the fire, their blue and orange mana fields clashing in the air above them. It's a visually stunning display of power in a quiet moment. Turan thinks that Aziz is quite strong after all. He realizes he'd be even weaker if he hadn't absorbed the mana from those dark elves earlier. Aziz is also analyzing Turan, wondering if he has great combat instincts or some kind of special bloodline. He knows he's in the presence of someone extraordinary. Turan sits in a meditative pose by the fire, looking perfectly at peace. He's the anchor of the campsite, providing a sense of stability for the grieving Aziz. Aziz makes a generous offer, inviting Turan to his Burke family if he doesn't have a set destination. He wants to repay the massive debt of having his life saved. He smiles proudly, explaining that the Burke family are vassals of the Grey House of Arabian in the north. That's a high-level political connection right there. Aziz clenches his fist, declaring that they come from a lineage of enchantment artisans who have crafted magic artifacts for generations. That sounds like a dream come true for a wizard. He promises to craft a magic artifact perfectly suited for Turan as a thank you. Turan looks thoughtful. This might be exactly what he needs for his journey into Zahar. Turan, Aziz, and Tilly, the horse, are finally making some headway through the thick forest as the morning light breaks through the trees. The atmosphere is quiet, a far cry from the chaotic battle they just survived against the Dark Elves. Aziz looks back at the trail, his expression full of regret. He admits that in his heart he wanted to send everyone back to their homeland, but he knows that's a luxury they can't afford right now. Aziz turns to Turan with a look of genuine respect and gratitude. He gives a soft, "Thank you, Sir Turan," but Turan just looks back with a confused expression, asking, "For what, exactly?" Turan isn't used to the formal thanks, and asks Aziz why he thinks mourning his fallen comrades would be pathetic. He's clearly trying to understand the strange social rules of the nobility. Aziz looks down, his face somber. He explains that in his world, mourning those lost in battle is often viewed as a sign of weakness, a cold reality of being part of a mage lineage. He walks past a simple stone grave, admitting with a sad smile that if that's the case, he guess he'll never be strong. He's a good-hearted guy, and you can see the weight of the losses is hitting him hard. Turan gives a rare, soft smile of his own. He seems to appreciate Aziz's honesty and the fact that he actually cares about the people who served him. Turan suggests that since they've decided to travel together, they should probably drop the formal titles. He tells Aziz they should talk more casually from now on, finally acknowledging their bond. Aziz is absolutely stoked, his face lighting up with a huge grin. "That's right, I'm counting on you from now on, friend," he shouts, clearly happy to have a real ally. Turan looks a bit overwhelmed by Aziz's sudden burst of energy. He gives a quiet, but you can tell he's genuinely glad to have made a friend who isn't trying to use him. Turan reaches out, confirming the pact with a simple, "I'm counting on you too." They've officially moved from traveler and savior to comrades. The group stops by a large, ornate wooden chest. Aziz stretches his arms and suggests, "How about we take a short break before they continue the trek?" Turan looks down at the strange box and asks a blunt, "What's that?" He's still a bit of a country bumpkin when it comes to the high-tech magic gear nobles carry around. Aziz opens the lid with a DALKAK sound, revealing a refrigerated box. He's showing off the perks of coming from a family of magical artifact crafters. The box is packed with fresh bread, meat, and fruit. Aziz explains that thanks to the enchantment, the food will stay perfectly fresh for about a week without any trouble. He starts going through his inventory like a kid at show and tell. He shows off a kettle that releases water with a button press and a disc that creates an instant shelter if you just gather some wood. Next is a magic orb that acts as an alarm, sounding off if anyone or anything approaches the camp. It's a total lifesaver when you're traveling through monster-infested woods. Aziz gestures to his own cloak and gear, proudly stating that what I'm wearing right now is also a collection of high-level magic items. The guy is basically a walking enchanted armory. Turan is genuinely impressed, muttering, "This is amazing." He asks if magic items aren't supposed to be incredibly rare, realizing just how wealthy Aziz's family must be. Aziz laughs and tells him that just this outfit alone would be enough to repay his life. He's incredibly grateful and doesn't seem to mind the cost at all. He gets serious for a second, saying things like this aren't worth as much as a life. He promises to reward Turan with something much better when they return to his home. Aziz looks at Turan with a curious expression, studying him carefully. He's clearly thinking about the gap between Turan's raw power and the technology his family produces. Close-up of Turan's eye as he lets out a confused. He's used to being the one analyzing others, so the sudden attention is making him a bit awkward. Aziz admits he can't even remember how many different types of magic he saw Turan use during their journey. He's realized he's traveling with a literal prodigy. Aziz asks the million-dollar question, have you spent your entire life just practicing magic? He can't wrap his head around how a young shepherd could have such a diverse arsenal. He wonders if it's some kind of bloodline ability that lets Turan learn any spell he sees. He's getting closer to the truth, though Turan isn't about to give away his secret. Turan just looks away with a stoic, "It just happens." He's playing it cool, sticking to the promise he made to his mother about staying hidden. Aziz holds up his hands defensively, reminding Turan that they agreed he wouldn't pry into each other's backgrounds. He respects the boundary, which only makes him a better friend in Turan's eyes. He quickly shifts the subject to lighten the mood. "Anyway, how old are you?" he asks, genuinely curious about the kid who just single-handedly saved his life. Aziz's jaw practically hits the floor as he lets out a shocked, Phuh! Whatever Turan's age is, it's clearly way younger than Aziz expected given his level of power. Aziz tries to play it off, muttering that a difference of 24 years isn't that big of a deal for us. Wait, is Aziz actually in his 40s? Wizards really do age differently. Aziz looks at Turan with a mix of awe and respect. He mentions that he never would have thought there were two geniuses like that in the world. He explains that there's another person whose bloodline is something else, and she might actually be close to Turan's level of talent. Aziz mentions this other genius is his second cousin and is around Turan's age. He's clearly proud of her, though he seems a bit intimidated by her power too. Turan is intrigued, asking if Aziz could ask that person to make a magic item for me. He's thinking about that better reward, Aziz promised. Exactly, Aziz confirms. We see a silhouette of a woman surrounded by flickering yellow energy. This is the genius cousin he was talking about. Aziz drops the title, the Princess of Arabian. She's shown cloaked in a golden aura, looking like a literal goddess of magic. This is the peak of noble power. The scene shifts to their feet as they walk toward a more civilized path. The TTEOK of Tilly's hooves matches their steady pace. Aziz explains the brutal politics of the great families. He says that unlike ordinary mage families, the leader of a great lineage isn't just a birthright. He explains that the current patriarch can't easily just pass the position to their own biological child. It's a system built on raw strength and merit. We see a vision of dozens of relatives from the same generation, all standing ready to compete. It looks more like an army than a family. Aziz notes that in a group that large, someone stronger than the patriarch's child always emerges. It's a survival of the fittest game for the throne. But Aziz reveals that among the current patriarch's children, there was one born with the greatest talent of them all, Misa. We get a glimpse of Misa's face hidden under a dark blue hood. She looks incredibly intense and dangerous, even in a memory. Aziz and Turan are back to walking on the path. Aziz explains that with all kinds of support, she's reached a level that most wizards can't even dream of. Turan looks a bit thoughtful, processing the idea of a princess of Arabian. He's starting to realize just how big the world truly is. Aziz gives a proud smirk, saying, "Well, of course, we gotta share too." He's happy to be associated with such a legendary power. Turan thinks to himself that there's definitely a reason great lineages stand at the top. He's seeing the massive investment and competition that goes into creating a noble. Aziz points forward and says, "But it looks like we're finally arriving." Turan lets out a curious HM, looking toward the horizon. A close-up of Turan shows the wind, HWIII, blowing through his hair. He's finally reached the destination he's been traveling toward for days. We see a narrow dirt path winding through a field of golden, waist-high grass. It's a peaceful, rural scene that belies the wealth of the family living there. Overhead shot of the Burke family estate, a massive, white-walled castle with beautiful fountains and manicured gardens. This is definitely high society living. A woman in elegant robes comes running out with her maids, her face filled with joy and relief. She looks like she's just had a massive weight lifted off her shoulders. "Mother!" Aziz yells as he drops his bags and tackles her in a huge hug. He's finally safe and back home with the person he loves most. Turan is standing in the background, looking totally shell-shocked. 43? He mutters, still unable to believe Aziz is that much older than him. An older man with a mustache, likely Aziz's father, walks up and tells Aziz to mind his dignity. He suggests addressing her as Madam in front of guests. Aziz introduces Turan as the new friend I met in the south. They walk toward the mansion together, Turan still looking a bit out of place in all this luxury. The mother holds Aziz's face, saying his journey shouldn't have been this dangerous. She looks worried and asks what exactly happened out there. Aziz explains the terrifying truth. They were attacked by dark elf necromancers. The tone shifts immediately as the parents realize the gravity of the threat. The mother is fuming, her face turning red with anger. She screams that those filthy creatures dared to target her son, showing her fierce protective side. The father tells her, "My lady, people are watching," trying to keep her from making a scene. He's the calm, political half of the duo. The father turns to Turan and asks which family our benefactor belongs to. He's trying to place Turan on the social ladder. Turan looks him right in the eye and simply says, "That's hard to say." He's not going to reveal his Zahar bloodline that easily. The father repeats, "Hard?" looking genuinely confused. It's a rare thing for someone in their world to not know their own lineage. Turan places a hand on his chest and admits, "To be honest, it's more accurate to say I don't really know." He's being honest about his orphan status. Aziz interjects with a, realized that Turan's background isn't exactly something to be proud of in noble circles. He's trying to keep things from getting awkward. The father nods, concluding that Turan belongs to no known family. He's categorized him as a talented commoner for now. The mother steps up and identifies herself as the matriarch of the Burke family. She promises to pay the reward for saving your treasure. Aziz is horrified, shouting, "What are you saying, madam?" He thinks his family is being way too formal and cold to the man who saved him. The mother explains that under normal circumstances it'd be fine, but they have an important guest staying with them. They can't let a stranger of unknown identity inside. A voice from the shadows says, "If it's because of me, you don't need to do that, Aunt." The tension in the room spikes instantly. Maisa steps into the light, looking at them with her cold, analytical gaze. She says she doesn't think someone who saved Aziz would suddenly try to assassinate me. A dark silhouette is framed in the grand doorway. It's the Princess of Arabian herself. She looks powerful and completely unbothered by the family drama. Mesa has long, straight black hair and a piercing look that seems to see right through you. She's the definition of noble elegance and lethal power. Aziz is stunned, muttering a surprised, "Mesa?" He clearly didn't expect her to be standing right there listening to their conversation. Turan stares at her, finally putting a face to the name. That woman is the Princess of Arabian. He can sense the massive mana radiating from her. Turan looks a bit nervous, a beads of sweat on his face. This is the first time he's encountered someone whose power actually makes him feel pressured. Mesa looks at Aziz and tells him that with such tight defenses, don't tell me. She seems to find their paranoia a bit pathetic. She walks past them, muttering that there's probably a traitor inside if they're this worried about security. She's already bored with the conversation. Misa announces she's tired and will retire first, leaving the whole family standing there in a stunned silence. She really does own any room she walks into. The mother bows and immediately tells her maid to prepare the second-best guest room for Lord Turan. The princess's word is clearly law in this house. Night falls over the mansion, the moon casting a cool blue light over the grand architecture. It's a peaceful, high-stakes setting for our hero's first night in a palace. A close-up shows Turan's tired eye as he finally gets to relax. He's had a long journey, and the soft bed is a luxury he's definitely earned. Turan is lying flat on his back in a massive, fancy bed, staring up at the ceiling. He's surrounded by luxury, but you can tell his mind is still racing. Morning comes, and we see a close-up of a beautiful magic lantern on the wall. It's a small detail that shows the level of enchantment throughout the Burke home. Turan is walking down the hall, his boots making a teobek sound on the floor. He looks like he's actually starting to fit in with his fancy white coat. He looks thoughtful as he wanders the corridors. He's likely still processing everything Mesa and the Burke family have dropped on him. Aziz spots him and waves, shouting, "You're up early again, huh?" He's back to his usual cheerful self, looking much better after a night's sleep. Aziz asks what Turan is doing, alone in the hallway. He's curious if Turan is lost or just exploring the mansion. Turan points at the magic lantern and says, "That caught my attention." He's fascinated by how common magic artifacts are in this household. Aziz offers him one, saying there are plenty left in storage. Turan just weighs it off, saying, "That's a bit too much for a simple light source." Suddenly, a massive surge of golden lightning, KW rung, fills the room. Turan looks toward the window as the sky itself seems to be tearing apart. Turan reacts with a shocked. The two of them stand by the window, staring out at the display of raw power. Aziz looks calm, but Turan is visibly impressed by the scale of the magic. From a distance, we see the silhouettes of the two men against the bright window. The lightning is striking the courtyard with incredible frequency and power. A massive pillar of lightning slams into the ground with a KWAANG that shakes the entire mansion. This isn't a storm, it's a high-level training session. Turan mutters, "I got curious," looking back at Aziz with a serious expression. He's realized the source of that power is right outside. Turan is hesitant, saying it might not be a good idea for a suspicious stranger to go prying into their secrets. He's trying to be a polite guest. Aziz smiles and tells him, to be honest, he's actually been waiting for this moment. He has a plan for Turan. Aziz asks the big question, between you and Misa, who's stronger? He's trying to bait Turan into a match to see just how deep his power goes. Aziz has a cheeky smirk, saying he's curious about the answer. He's basically playing matchmaker for a magical showdown. We see Misa's silhouette standing in the courtyard, her long hair flowing in the wind. She looks like a god of lightning standing in the middle of a storm. Aziz shouts, "Hey, Mesa!" as they approach. Mesa looks over her shoulder. Her expression is bored and unbothered as ever. Misa looks at the two of them and asks, "Aziz? And the one next to you is?" She's still acting like Turan is just some random guy. She remembers. His name is Turan and asks what brings them here so early. Her presence is incredibly pressuring, even without her magic active. Aziz laughs and says they saw you training and wanted to join in. He's acting like they're just there for a friendly gym session. Aziz starts, PFFT, laughing, telling Mesa that Turan is easily one of the most talented magic users he's ever seen. He's really laying on the hype. Aziz is still cracking up while Turan gives him a sharp ZZIRIT glare. Turan is clearly embarrassed by all the public praise. Turan just mutters a quiet, "Sorry." He's apologizing for Aziz's behavior, trying to maintain some level of dignity. Aziz asks if Turan is laughing at me too, while huffing for breath. Misa just looks at them with a skepticism that could freeze the sun. The two men stand before the Princess of Arabian. The scale of her power is obvious now that they're standing right in the middle of her training ground. Maisa looks Turan right in the eye and asks a single word, "Fight?" She's cutting through all the small talk and getting straight to the point. Turan stares back, his expression stoic and unreadable. He's not going to back down from a challenge, even if it's from a princess. We get a terrifying close-up of Maisa's eye, which is glowing with a brilliant blue mana. Lightning sparks are actually dancing in her pupil. This is real power. Turan reacts with a sharp, as he senses a massive buildup of energy. The air itself is starting to hum with electricity. The sky is filled with golden clouds and massive arcs of lightning. KW rung as Maisa powers up. She's literally commanding the elements. Her silhouette is shown through the blinding glare of the mana. She looks absolutely invincible, a true master of lightning magic. Maisa stares him down with her glowing eyes, her hair flying wildly in the wind. The KWRUG of the thunder is shaking the very foundation of the mansion. Turan is caught in a massive shockwave of lightning, his face lit up by the golden energy. He's gritting his teeth, struggling to even stand under the pressure. Close-up of Turan's wide, shocked eye. He's realized in an instant that the gap between him and Maisa is way larger than he imagined. The storm subsides, the bright blue sky showing through the clouds again. The sheer intensity of the clash has left the air feeling thin. The three of them stand in the quiet courtyard. Turan is huffing for breath, while Maisa looks like she didn't even break a sweat. Close-up of Turan's sweating face. He's looking at her with a mix of awe and a new, sharp realization of his own limits. Turan huffs, "USAU?" His hair messy and his clothes singed. He's just been shown what true noble power actually looks like. Maisa looks back at him with a cold, dismissive expression. She's completely unimpressed by his reaction to her power. She drops a final, brutal line, "You don't look like you're at a level where you can fight me." Ouch! She just totally shut down his confidence.